Dude, and we're live.
All right.
And I'm back with Joe Kent once again. Yeah, you did the show a year and a half ago or something. Yeah. It's funny. I go back and listen to those old episodes and I'm like, dude, my podcast used to suck. How did it actually gain momentum and start doing pretty well? But it's like anything.
I feel like anytime I see myself on TV, I'm like, oh, that was horrible.
Yeah. But I mean, we're also critical of ourselves. You know what I mean? I think that's a good trait to carry.
Yeah.
I almost always listen to my own show as a consumer.
Really?
To try and be like, okay, I'm saying too much or whatever it is, you know?
Give yourself a good AAR.
But I will link whatever, I don't remember what episode that was off the top of my head, but I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
So if people want to go back and kind of, you know, see what you were about and listen to that episode, because you went more into your background and everything that took you into the congressional race.
Yeah.
But for new listeners, because the show's growing all the time, just give like a Cliff Notes version of who you are and what you're doing. And I know the race didn't go the way that you wanted it, and put our tinfoil hats on, but we'll talk about that, you know? And then, you're not slowing down.
No.
You're going right back into
it. Yep.
Okay. And that's why I wanted to have you back on, because I think that's an important thing to use, you know, whatever platform I've been able to create to shine a spotlight on the good people that are trying to do good work in our government still, because they're few and far between.
Yeah.
And so, I'll just let you introduce yourself. We'll have fun with it, man.
Yeah. Grew up just across the river in Portland, 80s, 90s. Just wanted to be a commando of some sort when I was growing up, and then joined the Army right when I was 18. Went to 2nd Ranger Battalion, Alpha Company, back when we had Black Berets. Spent a couple of years there. And then right as 9/11, the attacks 9/11 were happening, I was in selection for Special Forces. So did the next, I think, 15, 16 years in the Army as a Green Beret, 5th Special Forces Group. Did some time in a special unit that does intel and operations. That's where I met my late wife, Shannon, who was killed in action in 2019. She was killed about a month after Trump attempted to get our troops out of Syria the first time. So after she was killed, I had started a second career in the CIA as a paramilitary guy, resigned from that because we have 2 young sons I needed to take care of after Shannon was killed. But I had a chance to meet with President Trump. And I just told him, I gave a once over. I said, hey, I've been fighting these wars for 20 years. You're the first guy that's given us the resources, the authorities we need to go after the enemy, but then was actually trying to end these wars and get us out. And that's what resulted in my late wife losing her life. So I kind of started a relationship there at the Trump administration, worked on the 2020 campaign, was going to go back and work somewhere in the national security realm with the Trump admin. And then the election of 2020 happened. It went that way. At the same time, the riots were happening. I had just moved back to the Pacific Northwest and realized I couldn't raise my kids where I grew up in Portland. So I moved right across the river to the battleground area. Nice little rural piece of property to raise my boys.
Is this where we're at now? Is where you moved initially?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's where I moved to. Yep, right here. So this has always been a conservative district. So
your driveway is the most Washington driveway I've ever driven up. You know?
Yeah, straight hill.
It was like a straight hill. All the trees are covered in moss, and then unfortunately, very similarly to the new piece of property I bought, you have to go through a couple white trashvilles, and then it opens up and becomes beautiful and nice.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
but I felt like I was in the movie Twilight coming up here. There's still fog lifting and stuff. I was like, this is totally Washington.
That's awesome, man. We get snow first up here all the time. So
dude, it's noticeably colder here too.
It is. Yeah, we're I think usually somewhere around like 10 degrees cooler than just down in Battleground.
Okay, so I actually when we were texting last week, I said, bro, I'll come to you this time because you drove up. And then I put it in the GPS and I think it was like 3 hours and 40 minutes or something. I was like, oh, damn.
Shouldn't have said that.
You know, and it's cool. I like traveling for the show, and especially like to connect with good friends and talk about important issues. But I was like, oh, looks like I'm getting up at 4 a.m.
I appreciate you driving down though, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's nice sometimes, man. It's funny because people trash on commuting all the time.
Yeah.
But when you commute for a large portion of your life, like I did, and then you stop commuting, there's a portion of you that misses it.
Yeah.
And it's because, dude, that's when I used to burn through like audiobooks and podcasts and stuff.
Right.
And now I don't do any of that stuff. I feel like I'm falling behind.
It does make you be really, you have that hour, 2 hours where you can really take advantage of, and then you lose it. And it's like, oh crap, now everything's filled up with all these their day-to-day tasks, but I didn't get to listen to a long form podcast or an audiobook. Yeah. So I agree with you. I had a long commute when I was living on the East Coast, and then I've gotten back into lots of commuting on the campaign trail.
Fuck, man. Well, dude, and I think, when we touched base the first time, it was, you were just starting the campaign. Yeah. And my show was still pretty small, but I was still like, me and Joe were in the Ranger Regiment together, basically when we were children. Yeah, right. And, when I saw you doing this stuff, we reconnected and had you on the show. And then it was, and I watched from afar via the internet. Yeah. And you were hammering it, man. Yeah. That was like, I can't even imagine the hours you were putting in, but it seemed like a pretty arduous task.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but that's kind of the only way we know how to operate, right? Yeah. It was, hey, let's just, if we're going to do this, let's go kind of all in, doing town halls, knocking on doors, trying to raise funds, doing media hits. So yeah, it's a big task. There's a lot that goes into running for office.
Did you think, literally knocking on doors and introducing yourself, like that's so far outside of really anything that we have ever done. What was that whole process like?
It's been interesting. Like we talked about how you always go back and listen to your old podcast, like to kind of give yourself a little bit of an after actions review. As I first started campaigning, I'll still get this sometimes. People will say like, you seem very buttoned up and like you don't ever, like you're in the military for 20 years, like talk about that. It was really unnatural for me at first, because it was like, hey, if you want to talk about the issues, I can tell you how I feel. But getting super into, this is me, this is why I'm running for office. Like to me, I was just like, that's not what we do. We don't talk about ourselves that much. Yeah. So I actually had to have, a little bit of advice and some coaching here and there. You eventually, but it's like anything else, something you hate and something that you're not very good at first. If you just stick with it, it eventually kind of clicks.
Did you feel like most people that would open the door would be open to just hearing what you had to say and meeting you and whatnot? Or was there a lot of like, get off my lawn? Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I thought there'd be a lot more people who just didn't want to talk, but there was so much going on, and it hasn't slowed down at all, right? There was so much going on, especially in, 21 and 22, that I was surprised by how many people did want to talk, even if they disagreed with me. I even had people who were like, look, I'm not a Republican and I'm probably not going to vote for you, but they wanted to hear what I had to say. And so that was actually, as far as that kind of kept me going, because it's like, okay, there are people out here that do care. Not everybody is checked out and watching Netflix 24/7.
Well, and I feel like, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but the current political landscape is primed for people to be like, you know what, I've always voted down party lines, but shit's not working anymore. Yeah. So at what point do you take a look at your old ways and, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, thinking that we're going to have a different outcome? You would think like people that hold the ability to critically think would say, okay, it's time to try something different. Yeah. And you're something different. That in itself, I thought would carry you far. Yeah. But, I think it was before we started recording, I said, I just watched your debate with Marie Perez. Yeah. And it's literally just a bunch of the same talking points out of DC that they've been force feeding down people's throats for a generation now. Yeah. Like I don't understand how people can't see this for what it is.
Right. That's the frustrating thing. And that's where like a lot of the, I would just say the money comes in. Like, cause you have to be able to have money and use it as a weapon to be able to get your message out to people who are persuadable, but the people that are too busy to actually go out and find that information on their own. That's kind of where elections are won and lost. Like I won the Republican primary against a 12-year incumbent who had millions of dollars on her side. And that's because, like you said, there was a lot of Republicans who were like, we can't keep doing this. Like we can't keep electing these same people who make these same promises and have these same failed policies. So, but then you do, to open up the aperture and actually win in general, you do have to have the resources to reach out to those low propensity folks who aren't going to just go seek the information on their own.
So you basically unseated Jamie Herrera.
I did, yeah.
While she was still in office.
Yep.
And then that's why you and, is it Marie or Maria?
Marie. Maybe it's Maria.
And so now that's the representative we have now, huh?
Yeah, she got me. She beat me by 2,600 votes. So, yeah.
Are you content with that outcome? I mean, obviously you're not content, but do you think that it's legal and everything is morally and ethically straight with the outcome? Or do you think it's a bunch of bullshit?
In Washington state, it's impossible to say like 100% that our elections are fair and free. And people get really mad at me on the left when I say that, or the mainstream media.
Well, I don't understand. That's not a partisan issue.
It didn't used to be.
Why would that? To make sure that our elections are fair and balanced. Mm-hmm. If you have a problem with that, that leads me to only believe one thing, is that you want to be able to control them.
Hey, the man that every single Democrat representative voted for Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, he is a notorious election denier. He said the 2016 election wasn't fair and free. And we spent years adjudicating that to find out that, yes, it was fair and free. And actually, the only people that interfered in it were big tech and the Democrats. But, it used to be okay for you to question those things. But here in Washington state, look, what I tell people is, because people say, hey, do you think there was election fraud? And I'm like, look, man, this system is so deeply ingrained that it's not fraud. They're not doing anything illegal. If you look at the election laws, the auditors have a wide variety of things that they can do that's completely within their purview. The way that we send out ballots to people without proving that you're a legal citizen. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like, to me, that's the original sin of mail-in voting, is that you can go to the DMV, never prove you're a citizen or an eligible voter. You basically show up with a bill that says you have an address, you're getting a ballot, and then there's the machine issue too, and that's a whole different ball of wax. But yeah,
I thought it was funny they were trying to attack you on the fact that you didn't think mail-in voting is the best system, and it's just like,
right,
dude. And another part of it, you said something along the lines of, I forget exactly how you articulated it, but you said like, they think the American workers are dumb people. And she goes, see, Joe Kent thinks American workers are dumb people. I'm like, are you having the same conversation?
No, I mean, we weren't. She was reading her attack points off her cards, and
But again, like, I know we talked about it before we started recording, but it just seems like such an archaic way for two people that are potentially going to be representing you to get to the bottom of issues. There were times when they were asking you questions saying, you can give one word response. Like, what are they hoping to get out of that? Just like talking points so they can make little clips of, and it doesn't make any sense.
It's just clickbait. Yeah.
Especially now with the technology, like, dude, I'm literally nobody, and I can sit down and produce a 3-hour show that will go out to 50,000 people.
Yeah.
These major networks have the ability to create long form content. And how about, like, why do you need a moderator? What is that even about? Like, I think what should happen is you and her should sit at a table like this, and you're given kind of like a guideline of what you want to go over and debate. And dude, if it takes 1 hour, cool. If it takes 4 hours, cool.
Yeah.
Like, what do they have to hide from?
I agree, but the Democrats will not ever agree to that. If you just look at, most political consultants will tell you, like, hey, you shouldn't sit down and do like a long form show, because at some point you're going to say something that could be misconstrued. What they want is these tight little press releases, or these tight little, very well scripted debates where you've really agreed to every single last term, so that it's all very canned. Like, if you look at my opponent, if you watch any of our debates, she's got a set of note cards. I would go up there if nothing. I'm here to answer the questions. Like, if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you I don't know.
Yeah, it's something about the Columbia River Treaty, and you said that you're like, I'm not super familiar with that. I'm not comfortable sitting up and give you an answer.
I'd have to have it sitting in front of me before I give you an answer on what it says.
And bro, like, oh my God, he doesn't know what that, like, nobody knows everything.
No one knows what that is. Yeah.
So for somebody to just give like an authentic answer, like, hey, I'd have to research that before I can really give you my opinion.
Yeah.
To normal people, that's like,
oh yeah, he's not just talking out of his ass. Right?
and then I hear her response, and it was literally just like talking point.
She had it in her notes. It's just like that. That's how they roll, and that's how they can hide their candidates for, like they did it with Joe Biden, they did it with Fetterman, to my opponent, to a certain extent too. Yeah. What the Democrats have done is they've shown that it doesn't really matter who they run, that their ground game and their money game is strong enough that they'll get ballots in people's hands.
The machine gets people into the positions.
Yeah.
And then they're just going to do whatever they're told.
Yep. And then to a certain extent too, Republicans are we're playing a different game. We're like, hey, come listen to me. I have this idea I want to tell you about. The Democrats are like, cool story, bro. We're getting ballots in our people's hands, and we're going to control who actually counts the votes.
And they're fucking winning.
And they're winning. Right.
Yeah. And well, that's one reason I was interested to ask you about like knocking on doors. What was the vibe or the sentiment that you got from just everyday people? Because, and I know like I keep a circle of people that may be of a similar mindset. So I'm kind of, sometimes I feel like maybe I'm in an echo chamber, right?
Sure.
But I don't know anybody that's happy with the way things are going. Yet the same people keep getting elected. The same policies keep getting pushed through.
Yeah.
And it starts to lead you to believe like, dude, everything that we're being told and everything that we're being shown is a fucking lie.
Yeah. A big criticism I would say that I have of kind of like maybe our tribe a little bit, and even broadening that out to like most conservatives, a lot of us have checked out. And the thing is, as frustrated as we are, the Democrats, they haven't, the Democrats, and not just the folks, not just the Democrats, the folks that want to destroy the country, they haven't checked out from politics. Politics is like their religion. Community activism is like their religion. You know, we have families, we have jobs, we're trying to prepare our communities, and those are all very noble things we shouldn't give up on, but we can't keep letting these guys win the political ground game.
What do you think in the very, very foundational elements of the people that are just simply, when you see the policies that they're pushing, it's like, that's clearly not good for America. So now you have to land on the fact that they're nefarious.
Yes.
They're doing things on purpose to destroy the country. Yes. And I mean, is it literally, you think like our politicians at the highest level are in bed with the Communist Party?
I mean, I do think there's a huge faction, especially when you look at his national security team, the people he has in very key positions. These people are truly globalists. Like, they do not think there's anything unique or special about America. I think they believe that it's also like the idea of a sovereign nation is arcane and things need to be ran by experts. They always say, trust the experts, trust the science. We need these folks in Davos who lead businesses and they have very fancy degrees and they all interact with each other. They need to be the ones that are in charge. I think
because we're just little peons that don't understand everything.
Exactly. Like we'd be much better off if we just listened to them because they're the smart, enlightened ones.
I mean, bro, the WEF literally says like one of their slogans is, "You will own nothing and love it."
You'd be happy, yeah, because we'll take care of everything for you. You're too dumb to do it on your own. Like, we need to control those things.
They've done such a great job of taking care of everything.
Right, exactly. Because things are going so great. I mean, I think that the assessment of like this is not incompetence. It's something much more nefarious and dark. I think we can accurately make that assessment, especially after the last couple of years where the Democrats controlled everything. Republicans haven't had power. We just slightly took the House back, and so we've got our hands in that one little tiny aspect of power, but everything else the Democrats control for the last 2 years. And you can't tell me from the time Biden came in, opened up the border, everything that happened with the COVID lockdowns,
shutting down all the energy manufacturing,
the energy sector. Like, okay, maybe if you did one of those things, you're kind of just incompetent and you're like a goofball, and you'd make some sort of a way to correct it. You'd want to blame the other guy because it's politics, but you'd still be like, oh, I'm going to turn back on U.S. energy because it's a dumb idea. Let's blame Trump or something. But they don't they never try and go back and correct it. They just keep moving on to the next disaster. So that's why I think it's very safe to say like this is by design.
It's no longer incompetence.
Right. This isn't just like, oh, Joe Biden's the senile old guy. He's the senile old fall guy.
And bro, they're gonna. This is my prediction. One day they're gonna let it all fall on him and wash their hands of 100%. Him and move on.
They'll put it on some classified top secret document they find in his garage, and they'll be like, "Well, we just found this here, Joe." It's like, we have to fire you now,
dude. I saw a picture the other day, and it was of Hunter Biden driving the Corvette, and the picture was dated after those documents were supposedly put in the garage. And so it's like, okay, it was a locked garage, right?
Right.
Except you got fucking Hunter Biden in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just wrong on so many different levels. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like some people are pointing out like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, dude, this is so wrong that there's no way it wasn't deliberate. That's the advantage of having a guy who's completely compromised like Biden, is that you can pick like the time and place that you're done with the guy.
I can't believe they had him do a press conference on it.
Yeah, that's how you know they're throwing him to the wolves. They're like, he's on his last legs. Get him out there.
What do you think of, when the Republicans were trying to elect a speaker?
Yeah.
There was, 15 that were holding out saying we need a more conservative-minded person.
Yeah.
And then you had a lot of, the establishment Republicans that were all upset about it. And then Crenshaw was saying they're acting like terrorists. Like, what's going on? I thought it starts to make you wonder. It's like, fuck, are any of the Republicans on our side anymore? Or is it only the ones that are on the fringes?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different angles to that. I mean, overall, like the 2015 or so that held out against McCarthy, like if you look at what they were demanding, they were basically demanding that Congress be conducted in such a manner that gave the American people more visibility on what was going on. They were fighting against omnibus spending, which is those massive 3,000-page bills that nobody reads. They were fighting against that.
Joe Kent said he won't even read the bills. It's like, oh, when are you going to sit down and read 3,000 pages?
Oh, yeah. She did entire attack ads like Joe Kent doesn't want to do omnibus spending. I'm like, yes, Google what omnibus spending is and tell me you want to do omnibus spending.
Yeah. What did you say? Pelosi said, like, we learn about the bill after it's through or something.
Pelosi's like one of her famous quotes about Obamacare. She's like, well, we have to pass the bill to see what's in it. And everybody like attacked her. And it was actually like one of the most honest things she's ever said, because that's the way the omnibus system works. And so those 20 Republicans who made the stand, that was one of the many demands that they have. The other demands were like, hey, we should be able to have an individual congressman add amendments or propose amendments to his peers and say, hey, I want this bill to go forward. And if he can get a majority, that bill goes forward, as opposed to just the Speaker of the House essentially being the one person who gets to control what goes on the floor of Congress. So it was really just restoring the people's voice. There's the motion to vacate too, saying that, hey, if the Speaker's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, a member of Congress, any member, to include a Democrat, can say like, hey, let's vote on getting rid of this guy. So again, it was really just giving the people more power. And it was unfortunate. We saw a bunch of people just say, hey, this is interfering with progress. And I think that's just like natural human tendency. People don't like change.
Yeah.
And we know from working in the government hates change. If you're like, hey, man, I think maybe we should do something slightly different. Like the government's going to like react. And I think that's just kind of what that was. But at the end of it, they were able to negotiate a great package that really gives the American people much more control over what happens in Congress. And so I think those 20 should really be commended.
Wow, dude. Yeah. And it's like those 20 are plastered all over social media, and they're trying to project them to people as looking like clowns.
Yeah, they did. They wanted to make it seem like, oh, these are all the conspiracy theorists or whatever. They're trying to get a bunch of QAnon demands, and you heard, and they're terrorists. You heard all that crap. But then, like, again, if you just did a little bit of the research, or you actually listened to the 20, I mean, they're talking about fiscal responsibility too. That was one of their big things. The Freedom Caucus guy, Scott Perry, and them, they were like, look, we want an actual resolution for a balanced budget. Like, basically, he's saying, I want Congress to do the same thing that you have to do in your everyday life, which is balance your budget and not run up much debt. Like, super radical, right?
And I know that seems unreasonable.
Yeah.
Except every American family in the country is doing that.
You have to do it or you get evicted. I mean, it's like pretty basic.
And that's funny. Like, I think about that now as a small business owner. Just the basic fundamental like understanding of how you run your business. You have to adhere to certain rules or you no longer exist. It's very simple. Right. Except the government. They're the only entity that's kind of like, you know what? I know this is kind of a universal law, but it doesn't apply to us.
Let's just print some more money. I mean, it's really it's just their debt. They'll be okay.
Speaking of money, how much more money do you think we're going to give to Ukraine? And I want to hear your. Here's the thing: when I look at Ukraine, I listen to my intuition on stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, you're crazy. You wear a necklace with a crystal on it. Like, yeah, okay. Maybe I'm a little crazy. But you can't fix problems abroad when we're broken at home. That's a reasonable conclusion to draw, right? And there's plenty of American cities that are currently in shambles.
Yeah.
And plenty of them right here in the Pacific Northwest.
Absolutely.
That could use an influx of money and new programs and like... I mean, fucking Seattle and Portland are two shining examples of that. What do you think is truly going on there? Because I'll put my tinfoil hat and tell you what I think is going on afterwards.
I mean, like, look, the whole Ukraine situation, like when people really look at the history, Russia and Ukraine, they've been having inter-Slavic conflict longer than we knew the ground that we're sitting on existed. I mean,
there you go.
That conflict right there predates our nation. And so for us to go over there and say like, hey, we didn't learn enough from the last two times we intervened in Europe, we're going to stick our 2 cents into this one. And there's also a lot of history there. Like the way that we've expanded NATO up onto Russia's borders has been very aggressive. I mean, you better believe it. If Putin was running color revolutions and propping up governments in Quebec or Mexico City, I'm pretty sure we'd go do something about that.
Yeah.
I think we'd have something to say about that. And so, Putin's in the wrong. He shouldn't go in. He shouldn't be killing people. He shouldn't be shelling cities. Like, that war is bad. Got it. But what we're doing by saying that, hey, we need to send billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine to fight Russia, it's doing a couple different things. Number one, it slaps the American people in the face. It's saying, like, Joe Biden opened our border up. There's no question about that. Fentanyl's killing somewhere around 200 to 300 Americans per day.
It's the top killer.
It's the top killer, right? That's what's actually killing Americans. Like, threats to our democracy, Vladimir Putin, all this nonsense, that's not killing any Americans right now. And so how can our government, I don't see how you can sit in the chair of a government official right now and you could be, the most pro-Ukraine, anti-Russian, but how do you even get there before, like you said, you address your own house? So that's number one. Number two, this whole thing is just like our ruling class, the government, they're always going to find the next war for us to go fight for multiple reasons. Number one, bottom line is it's really good for business. The defense budget, the more that thing grows, the more the money the lobbyists have to pay off politicians. And then also, look, that is one of the best ways for our government to really just distract us, send money over there, put it back in their own coffers. But then also for them to say, hey, we can't address all these other complicated things that are going on here at home right now because don't you know, we're at war. We have to fight to save humanity. And you and I saw this firsthand. We both fought in the war on terror. I mean, 20 years ago, right now, like right in the lead up to the Iraq war, we were getting told that if we don't stop Saddam Hussein right now, him and Al-Qaeda are going to have this allegiance with nuclear weapons. We got to fight him now. And if you're not with us, you're with the terrorists.
You're against us. That's right.
And we're being told the same thing. Like, how dare you sympathize for Putin?
And at 21 years old, I remember just thinking like, let's go, know? But I also have to be realistic enough to be able to detach and look at it from a 42-year-old perspective now. Yeah. And just be like, what the fuck were we doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, who was in charge? We were the 21-year-olds. Like, who were the 40, 50, 60-year-olds? Who were the Vietnam veterans? And unfortunately, a lot of them, they fell for the exact same nonsense for a wide variety of reasons. I think a lot of it's just groupthink. Yeah. But a lot of it is also like, hey, I might make a bunch of money or a name for myself off of this. And so I really feel like it's kind of on us right now to say, hey, guys, we've seen this movie before. And not to mention, like, it's one thing to go mess around in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that had catastrophic consequences. But pushing a nuclear war, like, there's a reason why us and Russia, we never got to this point during the Cold War, because anytime it got close to getting kinetic on anyone's borders, the Russians and the Americans sat down and they figured out a way to de-escalate. Let's not do this. The Cuban Missile Crisis, Republicans and Democrats, this was a bipartisan thing. But right now it's like, we can send billions of dollars of lethal aid to Ukraine. We can go on TV and say that we want regime change, because every time we've done a regime change the last 30 years, it's worked out fantastic, right? And so you got to put yourself in Putin's shoes. Like, if you're Putin and they say regime change, you're like, oh, they want to do me like they did Gaddafi and Saddam. Yeah. Like, how about hell no? So it's just like, at what point do we stop escalating this?
Well, bro, and something I think about, and I know this is probably an unpopular thing to say, but I listened to one of Putin's speeches not too long ago. Yeah. And he was talking about the broken American culture. Yeah. And he's talking about how we're pumping our children full of hormones and we're doing like gender affirming surgeries and just telling the audience that was in this auditorium or whatever it was about how fucked up our culture was. And I'm sitting there listening and I agreed with basically everything that he said. Yeah. And it's like, dude, how backwards is the world now when, I gave 20 years of my life to this country in different government capacities. And I'm sitting here listening to the Russian president and I'm like, yep. Yeah. And then when our own president gets up on the podium, like, you can't understand half the shit he's saying, but what you can decipher, it's about as out of alignment with my morals and my ethics as you can possibly be.
I mean, the only time Biden can like form a cohesive sentence is when he calls half the country, violent terrorists, or like, there's a reason why we have to go after all these different radicals. That's like the only time he can put two sentences together. But I mean, Putin's a smart guy. He's a former intel officer. So I think like most of his speeches, he knows the key things to hit, like hit that American division really, really hard. Yeah. So he manipulated me effectively. I think at the end of the day, the dude's a KGB operative. So, that's kind of the way I look at Putin. But
he's also a black belt in judo. Yeah. And bro, this might sound silly to people that aren't martial artists, but when you see someone achieve something like that, I give them a little credibility because I know how hard that path can be.
Yeah.
Like Joe Biden's never done anything like that.
Joe Biden's been in government like longer than you and I have been alive. We're in our 40s.
And he's been lying about it since the very beginning. I graduated top of my class with 3 degrees. And then like, what was that? Was it 60 Minutes or 2020 or something? Did a special on it. And this was from like, I don't remember if it was the fucking 80s or the early 90s, but they're like, we looked into this and discovered that he graduated bottom of his class.
It's like everything he said was a lie, and then he had to drop out. You know, but it's funny because that just shows you like when the media doesn't want you, they're going to hit you. But when you're the media's guy, like there was multiple years there where they wouldn't run anything bad about Biden because he was the anointed one.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. Do you think that the politicians are laundering money through Ukraine back to themselves?
100%. I mean, we saw some with the FTX. And I mean, you and I saw the way that the Iraq reconstruction, Afghan, like all that stuff worked. I mean, there's billions, trillions in the case of Iraq and Afghanistan that went over there. Where did it go?
Yeah.
And so it's not like, it's not like they're sending it back directly into their bank accounts, but it goes right through the defense contractors. Then it goes into some form of a third country national, someone in Ukraine, and then they donate it back. And then it eventually ends up in the form of a PAC, a super PAC, those types of things. Or they just slide right out and they hand the contract. Like the Iraq reconstruction bids went to Joe Biden's freaking brother.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's just so many, and then the whole Halliburton thing with the Cheneys, like it's
egregious.
This is their playbook.
Yeah. Man, it's nuts that like everybody's, maybe not everybody, but enough people see what's going on. And it's like they don't even respect the American people anymore or fear them. That's the thing. They're not worried about us holding them accountable.
No.
Joe Biden said verbatim, if you think you have a problem with us, you better have F-15s with Hellfire missiles.
I know.
And it's like, first of all, the Hellfire missile isn't attached to that airframe, dumb. So if you're going to make threats against your own people with your munitions, get that straight, right?
Right.
But part two of that, have you ever heard of a place called Afghanistan?
Yeah.
An insurgency is an ideology. Yeah. And an ideology is hard to beat.
Yeah. I mean, some guys with some rusty AKs and flip-flops gave us quite and we were pretty well trained. They gave us a hard time.
Even to the point where you can say they won.
I mean, we left.
They played the long game.
Yeah.
And they may not have won on the battlefield face to face, like winning actual conflicts and skirmishes, but they played the long game.
They did.
And who's in charge now?
Who's in charge? Right. Exactly.
Who's doing deals with China on their mines and shit?
Yeah.
Now,
and who left humiliated? That was tragically us.
Well, and here you go again with, if you just look at logically what happened and, fuck, when was the poll out? I think it might have been after our podcast.
It was like summer, like August, I think, of 21.
Bro, you could have taken a Ranger private. Yeah. And been like, okay, this airfield is secure.
Yeah.
And we want to pull everybody out of here. Tell me what here's a sand table. Tell me what you think this should look like. PV2 Anderson. Okay. Well, our perimeter security should probably be collapsed last. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, or anyone that's ever hit a house, an infantryman from the 101st. Yeah. So again, you have to draw the conclusion that catastrophe was by design. Yeah. There's no fucking way. Dude, Chris Donahue was there. That was our old company commander. Yeah. Did you see him on the ground?
I did. Yeah.
And it's like, hey, motherfucker, like, come on, dude. You were a fucking CAG operator. What are we talking about?
Or at least call it out. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
What I think happened is that all the lies eventually just came imploding. I mean, if you rewind just to the spring and early summer in Afghanistan when Biden laid out his plan, number one, like there was a plan on the table under Trump to get us out of there, and that's when the whole Russian bounties thing started. We spent about a year fighting the Taliban to the negotiating table. The Taliban agreed that, hey, if you guys are going to leave, then we're not going to mess with you. We'll let you. Okay, we'll call it good. We'll let you leave. And that was what Trump had negotiated. And that's when the ruling class said, oh, well, Trump's only doing this because he's playing into Putin's hand. There's Russian bounties. We have intelligence that says the Russians have been putting bounties on the heads of American soldiers, and Trump is playing into Putin's hands. Congress then prevented. They actually moved heaven and earth to stop Trump from being able to spend money to get our troops out of Afghanistan. Biden gets elected. Biden can't go with the Trump plan. He has to do something different. He wants his big speech on September 11th.
Yeah, of course.
And so I think Biden went to the Pentagon and said, hey, the Afghan government and military, they're going to hold, right? And these guys have 20 years of lying about every single assessment and never getting held accountable for it. So they're like, yes, sir. Yeah, we've spent $1 trillion over there. The Afghan security forces are good to go. Because they thought that they were going to play Biden, and they thought Biden was going to just extend. They didn't think he was actually going to pull out. And I think Biden's political team was like, no, we need this win. Biden's given that speech on September 11th to say that he's the one that ended the Afghan war. And so just bad decision after bad decision. And nobody had the courage. None of these senior leaders had the courage to be like, you guys know this is all bullshit, right? Like none of this is going to work. That's what they should have actually had, just the individual accountability, I think, to stand up and say that then.
The high ranking military officers I've never felt more let down.
Yeah.
Like they are just falling into the political landscape themselves.
They are.
And it's like, how is there not? Well, there was one, Stu Scheller, right? There was one
Marine Lieutenant Colonel.
There was one Marine Lieutenant Colonel and one police officer. Me.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You know?
Coincidentally, I think Scheller is the only senior military officer who's been held accountable for anything.
Yeah, I know.
And he owned it. He was like, yeah, I shouldn't have known that I was in uniform. So he actually got punished. The rest of them, just no matter how bad the disaster is, they'll always get promoted. They'll move on to go, be on the board at Lockheed Martin or Raytheon with Lloyd Austin.
But dude, everything, okay. Obviously, you're held to a standard when you're in the military, when you're in uniform. And maybe what he did was wrong by UCMJ.
Technicality.
But on a moral and ethical code,
100% right.
He was 100% right. 100% and the only thing that he said, nothing that he said was out of line. He said, we need accountability. That's it.
Yeah.
Who's going to step up and take responsibility for this fucking blunder? You can't say that.
Yeah. Right.
Well, because they don't want it to even be considered a blunder.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you think these motherfuckers are just, as they continuously fuck up, they take no ownership and they take no responsibility. And it's just they're going to rewrite history however they want it to read anyways.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
I
mean, the January 6th is a perfect example of that. I was talking about that the other day. I forget who I was talking to. And I was like, dude, the Ray Epps thing in there, that's not a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's a proven fucking fact that our own government had informants inside of the mobs trying to incite violence.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you saw the videos where everybody's like, no, we're not doing that. You're fed. They put it together in real time.
Yep.
And nothing. Not a fucking peep.
Not just nothing. Ray Epps is the only January 6er who's been thanked by the January 6th committee. Anybody else who was anywhere near January 6th needs to be hunted down relentlessly and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, with the exception of the one guy that was telling people to go inside, let it, and remove breach points, removed a lot of the barriers. That's the guy that the January 6th committee thanks. And then if we say we think that guy's a federal informant, we want more information on that, we're conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, dude. And dude, it makes me reach the point where it's playing by the rules is no longer going to work for us. When we have proven evidence, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? But that's proof to me that our government is fucking working against the people.
Oh, 100%.
That's it. That's what's happening now. So where do we go with that?
Yeah.
And I know my show is kind of crazy because I literally say whatever comes to my mind because I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? But I get people writing emails all the time that are like, when are we going to take this country back? When are we going to take this country back?
Those are definitely feds.
I always joke. Sometimes I talk to the feds that are listening to my show, But at the same time, a lot of people are feel like they're reaching their fucking breaking point.
Yeah.
And it's historically, how do things change? By the bullet or by the ballot? You know? And people have lost faith in the ballot. And so, what would you say to those people? Because I know you're still going full steam ahead.
Yeah.
You're going on another campaign soon.
Yep, absolutely.
And what would you say to those people?
I mean, I would say part of the, whatever term you want to use, propaganda psyop that the left is using right now is to get folks on the right or just common sense Americans so disenfranchised that they stop participating, because then you don't really have to do any kind of shenanigans to take an election. If these people just stop showing up and voting, then their voters dominate the ballot box, and then they can legitimately say, hey, this is the will of the people, but everybody else just checked out. Or they can get some people to get so mad they say or do something that then they can turn the full scope of the U.S. government against them and say, look, these people really are dangerous. We have to get rid of these people. So what I would say is, like, I get it. We're all frustrated, but what they fear the most is us being politically engaged.
Yeah.
They're terrified of that. Like, all these different rules they made, how easy it is to ballot harvest here in Washington state. If we get every single conservative common sense person out there to participate in the process, they're going to regret ever having that system, because we're going to beat them in their own system. And for me, that's how we can actually change the system. And people don't want to hear that, because it's going to involve a lot of hard work. It's going to involve some setbacks, like losing an election here or there.
Yeah.
But in the long run, the more of our people we get out to participate in this process, they are going to freak out. That's what they truly fear.
Yeah. And I think January 6th is a perfect example of that. They want to take any little inkling of someone trying to push back against the government and turn it into this, like, they're literally, calling it an insurrection. And it was people walking around in between the fucking, the fucking, what are the little things called? The little red walkway.
Oh, little red velvet walkway things. Yeah.
That's an insurrection?
Yeah.
No,
it's ridiculous. And that's the thing, is what they do fear is they fear political activism. They fear you showing up and either voting or showing up at a rally like that. So they're going to do everything they can to discredit that. And so January 6th is a perfect example. I had people all the time when we were doing like the anti-COVID rallies up in Olympia. I had people say, don't go up there. It's going to be a trap. It's going to be a trap. And it's like, no, it's not a trap. We're exercising our First Amendment rights. We're going to go do that. We're going to do it peacefully, but we're not going to let them scare us into not showing up. Because if we stop showing up, they win.
But the ironic thing about that is January 6th was a trap.
It was for sure. And they probably, I hope that the House Oversight Committee that's been established really gets to the bottom of that and truly once and for all exposes how many informants and how that all went down, the ways that they had people that were acting as provocateurs, because that needs to come to light.
I saw a thing on the news literally within the last 48 hours of 3 active duty Marines.
I saw that too.
That just got arrested.
Yeah. Because
their involvement in January 6th.
They set one foot on the Capitol building or something.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Right.
And
those guys active duty, their lives are probably going to be ruined. Like, their career is probably going to get put on a 2 or 3 year hold at best.
Oh, for sure.
If not just completely kicked out of the military, which is insane.
One thing that I saw that got pushed through, like, as soon as they elected the new speaker, was the reversal of the 87,000 IRS agents.
Yeah.
And I saw, I don't remember which Democrat I was talking about, but like, we wanted those agents to protect the middle class and go after the rich elites, And it's like, fuck, man. So they're doing some good work there then, huh?
Yeah, they are. Unfortunately, the Senate's going to veto that and Biden's going to veto that because the last Congress, the Democrats controlled, they approved the budget. And because the Senate Republicans caved on it. So right now, this current Congress doesn't have as much power as they should. So like they won't be in full control of the purse strings, unfortunately, until FY24. However, they can still put forth amendments like that and put Democrats, like my opponent, because my opponent says that she's like the super moderate Democrat, put her on record saying, like, you claim to be a small businesswoman. Why did you just vote to preserve the 87,000 new IRS agents who the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has already proven that these people will specifically target
middle class
Americans. Like they want to know your $600
Venmo transfers.
Right? Yeah. That's what we're worried about while we send $100 billion to Ukraine. Again, it's just like the slap in the face to the American people.
They just want to take and take and take and take. And it's like literal wars have been started over far less.
Yeah.
For sure. What are we losing in taxes? Like, when you look at the whole scope of everything that you get taxed on, it's well over 50% of your income.
It's insanity. Yeah.
I've told the story on the podcast before, but Zach and Levi are like family friends, but I kind of took them under my wing as like my own boys and helped raise them. Right.
Yeah.
Then when Levi turned 16, I gave him my 4Runner. Well, because I'm not technically family, he went in and said, hey, I want to register this in my name. Yeah. And they said, hey, that's going to be like fucking $2,500 or some shit, right?
Just some random number.
Yeah. And they're like, no, this was the sale price. No, if the sale price is below Blue Book, we have to go off of Blue Book. And it's like every little corner of your life. Like, how can they tell me that I can't give my car that I paid for in full to a family member? Nope, can't do it. And it's like every single corner of our lives they're doing that.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, and it's the frog in the pot analogy, because they've been turning it up for so long that to many of us, this is just business. This is just how life is, right? Yeah. If you want to take your boat out on Puget Sound, you have to pay $750 a year, and all these little things that add up. And it's like, when you take a step back and wonder, like, where does all this money goes? Nobody fucking knows.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, this is another thing that they're fighting over right now is the debt ceiling limit. And you'll hear the Democrats say that Republicans are gambling with Medicare. They're gambling with Social Security. Look, as you said, our government's not running out of money. They take in plenty of money. Yeah. We don't need to run up these massive deficits. And that's what the 20 we're fighting for. That's what a lot of the House Republicans are fighting for right now, saying like, okay, before we even discuss taxes, most Republicans want to cut taxes. Democrats want to increase them. Can we just agree with the money we have right now? Let's pay all of our bills and not incur any more debt. And to say that, you're automatically labeled like they're trying to starve grandma, like all these different, different ad hominem attacks they take against Republicans. But really, at the end of the day, it's just basic common sense stuff that you have to use in your everyday life.
So when you say like the Republicans hold the majority now, but they don't have the power to affect much change.
Yeah.
Can you just unpack that a little more? Because I think you understand the ins and outs of what's taking place in Washington more than me or probably most of the listeners.
Yeah, the biggest tool that Congress has, I mean, obviously Congress is the legislative body. They pass laws. But one of the biggest things they have is that they approve the budget. And then once the budget for these federal agencies is approved, they can basically Congress can do oversight, and they can say, hey, why did you do X, Y, and Z? Tell us about RABs. Tell us about COVID. But to really hold them accountable, they need the ability to say, you know what, if you FBI, if you ATF, if you Anthony Fauci at NIH, if you continue to behave in this way, we're not going to fund you. That's real leverage right there. Yeah, what the last Congress did was they approved the budget. And because a lot of Republicans, unfortunately, especially in the Senate, caved, they should have held out and they should have said, nope, we'll pass a continuing resolution that funds the government. And the next Congress that was just elected, because they did this like right before the holidays, the election had already happened. We already knew Republicans were going to take the majority. The right thing to do would be to say, hey, the next guys who got chosen to lead this country for these next 2 years, they get to set the budget, but they didn't do that. So unfortunately, until FY24, Congress isn't going to have the full scope of its power to say, hey, if you don't come here and explain what you're doing, we're going to defund you. They can still do oversight. They can still do hearings. They can still propose legislation.
But that money's already spent.
That money's already allocated, right? So right now, the answers that we want, unfortunately, and you saw a lot of this. Jim Jordan just put out a ton of subpoenas against the Department of Justice for various things. The Department of Justice came back to him and said, hey, we're going to get to that later, but we can't because those are active investigations that we're running right now. And so unfortunately, like
no conflict of
the
interest
back and
there.
Forth, right? The back and forth, if Jim Jordan was, had the budget in his back pocket, he could be like, well, that's cool, DOJ. If you're still running those ongoing investigations, and you don't want to answer my questions, I'm not going to fund you. And that's when we really start playing hardball. And it's not like we're going to go and defund them, but to have that potential that actually holds their feet to the fire.
Why don't we defund them? Fuck the ATF.
Oh yeah.
Fuck the FBI.
ATF, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
look, I mean,
like if you're going to play these games, you get no money.
Right, exactly. I mean, why would we have multiple cities? Atlanta's under assault right now by Antifa. We've seen Seattle and Portland burn
police cars and shit.
So, like, I'm sorry, what does federal law enforcement actually do? Oh, that's right. They're chasing down every
pistol
single
braces.
Yeah, they're going after pistol braces and any grandmother who was anywhere near the Capitol building on January 6th. Like that's their priority.
And bro, like the whole pistol brace thing, it's like that stuff needs to be legislated.
Oh, yeah.
How can an agency just arbitrarily decide?
Yep.
You know what? You have, 150 days to destroy or turn these in? Yeah, right. We'll get right on that.
Exactly. I mean, it's a huge flex, too, because, look, that's not constitutional. I mean,
no, of course not.
Second Amendment, but then also just the way that this agency went and made this regulation. Like, there was a pretty significant Supreme Court ruling right after Roe versus Wade, so it didn't get a lot of traction, but it was West Virginia versus EPA. West Virginia basically said that the EPA is coming in here, and they are acting like a legislative body passing new laws. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court said, no, they can't do that. Like, that's not what federal agencies that fall under the executive branch don't make laws. And so that's, in my mind, that's really just what I'm sure some lawyers will argue with me, but I think this is worth taking to court. Like, the ATF just came in and said, like, this is now, you must do this to people. It's like, no, you don't have that ability. If you want to pass that law, Well, go put it before Congress and let them vote on it. It's still unconstitutional because it infringes on the Second Amendment, but there is a process for this. And the ATF, the EPA, all these different organizations, they don't get to act like a legislative body.
No, that's so far outside of their jurisdiction or what their scope of operation is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And they're just deciding it, and now they're going to enforce it too.
Right.
I'm wondering, I would like to know the statistics on how many mass shootings involved a pistol brace. I'm going to guess almost none of them.
Yeah.
Right. But that's a moot point in itself too, though.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is there's such a dangerous piece of equipment that we need to ban them. Unless you pay us $200, then you can keep it.
Then it's perfectly safe.
Then it's perfectly safe.
Because Zelensky needs more money.
Yeah, exactly. But then it makes you wonder, if you look at the type of person that would want an AR pistol with a pistol brace,
yeah,
that's probably the type of person that isn't the biggest fan of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
So how can we register and get on record every single person that has one of these?
Exactly. And automatically make anybody who's naturally inclined to say, like, screw you, I have the Second Amendment. How do we make them a criminal?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I live with now we can go through and see who purchased, because, you probably got the firearm registered at least, or at least, when you purchased it, there was a background check. And so now they knew who to look at.
They made some money. They identified their opposition, and all in this little fucking rule that they just arbitrarily made.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dude, it's nuts, man.
Yeah. It's the administrative state. I think that's one of our biggest challenges. We get these, right versus left issues all the time. But I really think just the out of control, unelected bureaucrats in our federal government are really public enemy number one of the American people. And that's why Congress is just so essential.
And in my personal experience, again, I said it earlier, maybe I'm kind of in an echo chamber, but I don't think anybody on either side of the political spectrum is very happy with what's going on right now.
They shouldn't be, but things have gotten to such a cultist level where the folks that are on the left, they think, they have to think that people like me and you, we're literally Hitler, we're super evil. So they can't even.
Joe Kent breaks things.
You can't even have exactly. You can't have a conversation and be like, whoa, wait a second. Are you happy with the way things are going right now? Maybe we disagree on one or two things, but overall, don't we think there needs to be a change? And it's hard to have that.
The bizarre thing is these hills that these people wanted to die on. Dude, we got emails that are I hope your kids die because I wasn't shutting my gym down.
Right.
Now it's no longer a conspiracy theory. The CEO of Pfizer is we didn't test if the vaccine stopped transmission or not. We never did test that.
Turns out you guys are the test.
Yeah. Barack Obama literally said that.
Yep.
He said that.
Yep.
Okay, this isn't fucking us out on the fringes.
No.
These things are becoming proof now. And it's people dug their heels in so hard that they're unwilling to say, fuck, man, we were wrong.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, guys like you and I, who did between the ages of 21 and 29, I did 14 deployments. And dude, I was all in on the war on terror, right? Yeah. And now I can look back and be like, dude, I got played by our government.
Right.
We probably shouldn't have been fucking driving up and down the streets of Ramadi fucking shooting people, because guess what? If they were driving up and down our streets in tanks and shit, we'd be the guys out putting IEDs
exactly.
in. Exactly. I've come to the conclusion. I did an episode that I said, were we the bad guys? Because it's we're literally in their neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
What do you fucking think people are going to do?
Yeah.
And so I can reflect on that and be you know what? I think I'm probably going to be on the wrong side of history on that one. And I can own that.
Right.
But they can't say that about a fucking vaccine.
Right.
Where fucking the record numbers of youth athletes are just dropping. We don't know why so many athletes are dying
suddenly. Yeah. I mean, look at and they're suppressing a ton of the data coming out of the military. But from our old community in special operations alone, I can list off guys that have just fallen over dead. You
never saw that one time.
Exactly. We spent between the two of us, there's 40 plus years there. Guys are dying of a lot of stuff. Heart attacks, just falling over dead from doing physical activity. That wasn't one of them.
Wasn't one of them.
Never heard of it.
And we literally worked our bodies to its breaking point.
Sure.
Every single morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, overuse injuries.
Noble Hill.
Right. Yeah.
And, fuck, man. And it's when are people going to start demanding accountability? But the weird thing is, and it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this, I think that this is going to continue to get worse. Yeah. I think we're going to see more and more deaths.
Yes.
And I think they're going to somehow manipulate the narrative to say that anti-vaxxers were the ones that allowed a super bug to develop. And then we're going to be the bad guys again.
I'm sure there's a group
still alive.
I'm sure there's a group of media consultants right now that are working on exactly how to spend that.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're going to try. The thing is, I do feel like the little bit of hope I have is that they've lost a lot of credibility. And so I do think we're going to see more people that were like, I think the other day, Scott Adams said, like, at the end of the day, the anti-vaxxers were right, and he had been a big proponent of the vaccine. And there's been a couple folks like him who've actually had the courage, and those people should really be commended. I mean, there's an instinct, I think, for those of us who've always been hardcore, like, I'm not taking the vaccines, lockdowns are stupid. We kind of want to be like, all of you were stupid and we were right. What I think we need to do is we need to encourage more people and be like, look, dude, you were lied to. Like, we were lied to in the war on terror. A lot of people who thought they were like, oh, well, the government says, okay, I got it. I want to be a good person. I don't want to spread this disease. I'll get the vaccine. I'll mask me. I'll mask my kids. Like, well, I think we need to say to them, like, look, our disagreement that we had a year ago about this, that's not the issue. The issue is that we were lied to by our government. Let's hold them accountable. That's where we need to turn our ire.
And dude, something that I've always said, because I have people ask me, they're like, dude, how did you know? How did you know? Right. And it's like, bro, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But when your government is having to force you into compliance on things, that in itself tells me they're up to no good.
Exactly.
Because good sells itself, right? Like, if our kids were, if you saw fucking, oh, dude, so-and-so's kid just died, or this so-and-so's mom just died, like, this is ravaging our community. Guys like us are going to be like, okay, well, what measures do we need to take to protect ourselves? But when you see none of that happening,
right?
And they're like, and so if you don't do what we say, we're going to destroy your livelihood.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I know we all know plenty of people that were like first responders, firefighters, police officers. Like, if you don't take it, you're getting fired.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that's coercion. That's illegal.
Yeah.
Like, what are we fucking talking about?
Yeah.
And now here we are 30 months later or whatever. And like I think it was before we started recording, talking about Brett Weinstein, talking about the vaccine. These fucking prominent scientists are now like, oh yeah, bad things are happening as a result of this. And one thing that he was saying, or I was listening to it this morning, is that vaccinating during a pandemic, not before it, but during it, allows for massive mutations of the virus, And what's funny is, for a long time, if guys like us even had this discussion, you're not an epidemiologist, you're not a doctor, you're just
off YouTube.
You're just a dumb ranger. You can't even talk about it.
Right.
And now
trust the experts.
Yeah. And now the experts are saying, yeah, we think we fucked that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy too, because I mean, that basic knowledge of like, don't vaccinate during a pandemic, like, we didn't know that, but people in that sphere, they knew that realm. And there was a deliberate campaign to keep them quiet, or to tell them, hey, if you have your own opinion about this or your own research, we will destroy you. Yeah. And it's crazy how many of them just went along with it. And you look at guys like, Peter McCullough and Dr. Malone, who actually were experts and they spoke out. I mean, those guys were deplatformed from everything. And it really wasn't until Joe Rogan had him on his podcast that, like, I think a lot of normal people were like, oh, wait a sec, there is something afoot here. Well,
and dude, when Rogan had him on, now their mission's to deplatform Rogan.
Yeah, exactly right. He becomes the bad guy.
And it's like, dude, Rogan's always been a very middle of the road, critical thinker that wants to analyze things from all angles, right? And I know a lot of conservatives will hate on Rogan, and it's like, no, you want people like that.
You want them
that aren't on your team. They're not on the other team. They're literally there to look at facts and have experts on both sides of the field to be able to get to the bottom of things and draw like logical conclusions. Yeah. That's all he was doing.
Just him having the courage to have those people on and to make their own case with his platform is huge.
Dude, it was awesome.
Because there was very few people that had the platform like he did that would have those conversations. Pretty much anybody who was like close to his size, they wouldn't touch a 10-foot pole. They wanted to talk about anything else. Yeah. But what was affecting everyone's lives.
So I might have to cut this out in editing. I'll double check after we are done recording. But you know who's going on Rogan in 2 days? Glover.
Oh, is he really?
To discuss American contingency.
Oh, sweet.
10 million people are going to hear about American contingency.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because when he was in town the other week doing training at my range, he did my show and he talked about that. And we talked about how he was painted as a terrorist.
Oh, yeah. He's on the list.
He's on the list. It's like he literally gave his entire youth to this country, fucking doing the missions that he was tasked to do at the highest level. and was great at his job. But as soon as he develops, and the thing about American contingency isn't like, hey, let's all get a group of people together to have a revolution, overthrow the government.
No.
It's like, hey, in the chance of a flood, we need to be able to communicate with other members of our community to move food around, to rescue people. Yeah. It's basically teaching your own community to be their own first responders.
Yeah, 100%.
And bro, you can't have people doing that.
They don't want you organizing, man.
Like Glover told me, he's like, a big thing that I want to start teaching is literally like vehicle mobility, how to get your vehicle loaded out for emergencies, how to can and jar food. Like, he goes, I want to move further away from the firearm space and more into just like family oriented capabilities.
Yeah.
Terrorist.
Right. Terrorist. Yeah.
You know, like,
how dare you teach people to break free from like everything that we force feed them, like whether it's grocery stores, supply chains.
That's
like
exactly right.
We need people dependent on us, so that therefore Mike Glover is a threat.
And like, you know, like, a lot of his stuff too is like how to deal with power outages or the grid going down.
Yeah.
They want us to be reliant on all this stuff.
Yeah.
So then if they pull the strings, we're playing catch up. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you took some basic precautions, okay, power's out, I'm good. You know?
I mean, yeah.
And now they're going after gas stoves. You see that? And it's like,
talk about a distraction. Like, of all the things we have going on right now, our government's like very concerned about gas stoves.
But the reason that it makes me think about this stuff, or I mean, the reason they may be doing this when I think about this stuff is like, because we just had a pretty severe power outage, I don't know, a couple months ago. Western Washington got hit by a pretty gnarly storm.
Yep.
And some people in my neighborhood were, their power was out for like 7 days.
Yeah.
Well, with gas, you can still cook.
Right.
You know? So, well, we can't have that.
Can't have that now.
You know?
We need you down in the food line or whatever we tell you to.
So, yeah, it's crazy. And then when you start to see people that you know personally that are friends of yours, like, Glover's a good fucking dude. He's just, he's one of us.
Yeah, he's solid guy.
You know? Nope. Gotta make sure that we paint him to be this fucking evil person.
Yeah.
And we saw the same thing with Rogan. Like, as soon as Rogan didn't even draw any conclusions. Rogan
had the guy
he is like, I'm just going to give these people the ability to share their perspective.
Yeah. And
then they dug up something about where like someone, he used the N-word 15 years ago. So he must be racist. And it's like, he's a comedian.
Right.
Comedians are saying the most egregious shit ever. And that's funny.
That's what they do. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But
they'll always find something. That's the thing. And if they can't find something, they'll just make it up.
Exactly.
You know? And it all goes like this post-truth world where it's like they're going to throw so much crap at you that you really you don't have time and you can't sort what's true or not. And so eventually you just sort of surrender and you're like, well, what'd you guys say it was? Okay, it's that. I'll go. If that's the easiest thing to do to get you off my back right now, fine. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We'll get rid of my gas stove. Okay, God, I'm not a Nazi. I'll get rid of my gas stove.
And then you had all these like, fuck, what was it? I'm drawing a blank on it. Fuck, I don't know. I'll go back to that. But the whole, it comes down to anybody that wants to promote healthy living, they come after. Like, do you know Andy Frisella? Are you friends with him at all?
I don't think so, no.
He owns the company First Form.
Okay, I know who he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
He is another one of us.
Yeah.
Like, that dude's my homie. Like, we text back and forth and he's telling me crazy shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, the more he preaches just common sense approach to living, the more fucking flack that he catches about everything, dude. And it's like, he's been saying the same shit from the beginning. And, you know, like you see people online, you think he's like the fucking rebirth of the Antichrist.
Yeah. Was it Time Magazine a little while ago that had like the white supremacist origins of physical fitness? They did a whole, I think it was Time. It's like the old timey video or pictures of guys lifting weights and like white supremacy right here.
Yeah. Like, dude, what? Taking care of your body. Again, it goes, I mean, fuck, dude, we could talk about this all day and we will because it's fun, but it's also like, it's scary that anything that serves you, like to be a strong, capable man, your very foundational element is your physical body.
Yeah.
And
people don't want to hear that.
And people don't want to hear that. And if you take care of your body, it's probably rooted in racism.
That's probably right. Exactly. We want you. We need you to kind of like be fat and just sort of compliant. Like
yeah. Then that's also the first step to being a defiant motherfucker.
Exactly.
Is the ability to put a fucking 50-pound rucksack on and run off into the woods for a week.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I mean, we could tell when we were probably on the wrong side of history, like you said, when we were over in Iraq or Afghanistan. You could look at a field of people of civilians, and you could pick the guys that were a little more physically fit. You'd be like, that guy's a threat.
Yeah,
I'm going to watch him. The guy that looks like, he just ate, 10 cheeseburgers or whatever. Like, I'm not too worried about him, but that dude over there, there's something about him. And so that's the way I interpret things from our government nowadays.
Dude, I was telling you about it before we started recording about the new food recommendations that came out from the U.S. government. And bro, you can look this up. I'll pull it up when we're done. It put Lucky Charms above eggs and steak. And it said eggs and steak should be eaten moderately.
Moderately, right?
Moderately.
But Lucky Charms, just go after it.
Dude, and it's like, listen, I know there are people that want to debate the red meat thing, but I don't even think there's a debate to be had on that. It's a super nutrient dense food. And when I eat red meat, I perform better, I'm
going to go with being more nutrient dense than Lucky Charms.
Yeah. But,
not a doctor, but...
Put red meat on the back burner for a second. Eggs? Come on, dude.
Yeah.
They are literally nature's superfood.
Yeah.
That has like a perfect combination of proteins and fats and amino acids.
Yeah.
Everybody knows eggs are good for you.
Right.
Like when my daughters eat shit for breakfast and I see them pour a bowl of Cheerios, I'm like, you need to have scrambled eggs too. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell my daughters to flex their muscles so I can feel their biceps and see if they ate their eggs or not.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is literally how you build your muscles.
Yeah.
So I need to check if you ate your eggs, flex your arms,
Yeah.
Like,
I'm pretty sure my 7-year-old would be able to tell you that Lucky Charms are not as healthy as eggs.
And, but the Lucky Charms were on an even playing ground with chicken breasts. So
clown world. Like who do they think actually believes this?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you could take a 7th grader that's taken a nutrition class and understand what's going on.
Right.
But then it makes you wonder, was our food pyramid that we were told, like the base of our food pyramid when we were kids was pastas and breads.
Yeah. Low fat.
That's not going to make your body run optimally. We all know that now.
Yeah.
And so the conclusion or the question that you always cycle back to is, was it by design or was it just due to incompetence?
Yeah.
Because I think there is a lot of incompetence running amok
if we don't know something, you make a bad decision, but then you adjust.
But it's fucking.
But if you look at all the money, though, it's just like the military-industrial complex. If you look at all the money involved in food law, in the food lobby and all that, it's the same thing. I mean, like the big cereal producers, those are the ones that were really paying enough money to get the influence in Washington, D.C. to say, like, this is what people need to be eating.
And remember, like, the big push to get fat out of everything. So they could just fill it with high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
If you look at when that took place, which was like mid 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
That, when we took fat out of everything, is literally when the obesity epidemic began.
Yeah.
And you've all seen those. I got this video texted to me again, like within the last 24 hours. And it says 1950s gym class.
Yeah.
And every boy had a 6-pack.
Yeah. And they're doing pull-ups and.
And like climbing ropes.
And those are just average dudes. If you can do that now, like you're a specimen.
Oh, bro. So Levi, again, the kid that I gave my Forerunner to that is like family to me, he is a super athlete, right?
Yeah.
Because him and his mother, or me and his mother, have been like, we work out together every single night, right?
Yeah.
He's been inundated with fitness since he could fucking walk. And he climbed Rainier with me and summited when he was 14. Just a stud, dude, right?
Yeah.
Runs a 5:13 mile. So, smoking,
That's
bro.
sick.
And he's a senior in high school now, and he's shredded, right? And I said, Levi, how many other kids in any given class are as good of an athlete as you? And he goes, typically in any one of my classes, there's about 30 people. It's usually me and one other kid that are in shape.
Yeah.
Every other kid is overweight. And usually the other kid that's in shape is on the wrestling team.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
dude,
exactly.
So that's it, right?
Yeah.
2 kids on average in every class are in shape. And it's like, dude, that's our future.
Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, if you look at all the health implications, and then you take something like COVID and you throw that like right in the middle where those kids got taken away from any kind of like social activity, their sports got shut down more than likely. Like, and then we just sort of throw them back in. Like, it's just, I mean, we're running just this horrible experiment on our kids.
It's weird that physical fitness of all things is kind of like the target of demonization now.
Yeah.
You know, like I think if we can't all agree on one thing, it can't be that our bodies should be taken care of.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing to exercise. It's a good thing to eat healthy. Like, yeah, but that's white supremacy, I guess. Yeah.
And then he told me too that like half the kids in every one of his class think they're gay.
Oh my God.
And bro, like, I honestly think like, dude, we're 40 years old. When we were in the military, and I always tell people this, I'm like, no, people think like, oh, if you're a conservative minded person that you hate everybody, and you're racist and you're homophobe and you don't like transgender people. And it's like, no, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
I don't care who you fuck. I don't care what kind of clothes you want to wear, but let people determine these things when they're adults.
Yeah.
And then go live the lifestyle that suits you best.
Right.
And when you start pushing it on children, again, it has to make you draw like this is agenda driven.
100%.
You know, like what? Yeah. And then the other thing about it is like, I don't think we should be celebrating the fact that all our little boys think they're little girls now. I think we should be looking at it from like a medical standpoint and be like,
what's happening?
Why are testosterone levels at an all-time low?
Yeah.
Like if all of our little boys think they're little girls now, this isn't just everybody had an epiphany and they realized that masculinity is bad.
Right.
That's not what's going on here.
Yep.
There's actually a medical problem that's taking place.
Yeah. And
again, is it by design or is it just the fact that we feed ourselves shit? We're sedentary.
Yeah.
We're indoors now. 93% of your life is spent indoors. So you're not getting the nutrients from the fucking sun. You're not breathing fresh air.
Yep.
You're not like, oh, grounding. You're crazy. You can't say that. But bro, they're starting to find like proof on all this stuff. Being out in the woods is actually good for you on a fucking physical level. Shocking.
Common sense. Yeah.
Like, and how come, you know, guys that have spent a lot of time in the woods, you know, when you walk out there, man, something feels better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's where you're supposed to be.
And it's like your body is in tune with this. And it's like, this feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't genetically programmed to look at screens all day.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the way we're becoming. That's the way our society is moving.
And so like the massive like decline of testosterone could simply be lifestyle and nutrition based.
Yep.
And it's not some fucking nefarious agenda, government control. It's literally just, dude, we're not treating our bodies in the manner that they should be treated. And now our fucking hormones are getting all fucked up as a result.
Yeah.
We should want to look at that. Right. Like, you know, and not have any political ideology attached to it.
Right. Why would you not want our kids to be healthy? Yeah. I don't get that.
You know, and I think testosterone is down 40% in one generation. So guys that are 20 years old versus when we were 20 years old have half the testosterone.
I mean, that quickly becomes like, people will say I'm being hyperbolic, but that quickly becomes a national security issue.
Yes, it does,
in terms of like, can we defend ourselves? But also like, are we going to end up becoming like one of these countries that just hits a demographic down spiral and there like literally is no more of us?
Yeah,
like,
bro. I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, read a fucking history book.
Yeah.
Like when a nation or a tribe or any element of people become weak and incapable of defending themselves, what has happened every single time? An outside entity will take them over.
Yeah.
You think human psychology is different now?
Yeah.
Like if we get to the point where we can no longer defend ourselves, there's a 1,000,000% chance that somebody will capitalize on that.
100%. Yeah. Well, especially when at the same time, like our government says the border's wide open and we've had like 5 million people illegally enter our country. It's like, okay.
By 2050, and again, these are just statistics, so who fucking knows what the validity of them is or are, but by 2050, if we're on the current trajectory that we're on, 80% of Americans will be obese.
I believe it. Yeah.
That's not that far away.
It's not that far away at all. I mean, if you just look, it's just weird looking at like a demographic of people when you're out and you see like America has, you can look at it. You don't need to see stats or any of that stuff. You can see when you're in a larger group that we have a health problem as a country. And like, you know, we're in our 40s. We're not super old or anything, but I remember a time when that wasn't the case. Wasn't that long ago when, I mean, if you go back, someone sent me this, it's a picture of George Costanza from Seinfeld. And it's like at the time in the mid 90s, George was considered hilariously fat.
Oh,
And then now you look at, now there's like pictures of George like flexion of his shirt off. You know, he's not in great shape or anything, but now you're like, actually, by today's standards, that dude's not that fat.
Yeah. Dude, it's funny. I was, what was I talking about on Instagram the other day? Something, I think it was talking about ice baths or sauning, right? Yeah. And this guy wrote me, and he's like, listen, it's, you got to understand that the people that follow you aren't all elite athletes like you are. And I was like, bro, there's nothing elite about me. Like my 2-mile time when I was in the regiment was like high 12s, low 13s, which people hear that and they think, no stud. Those were shit times.
Yeah. There were guys running like 11. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. There was a guy, what was his name? He was one of the, damn it. He was one of the only black dudes in Alpha Company. You can't say that, but that's the color of his skin. He was a black dude.
Cooper.
No, he ran for college before he came into the regiment.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. What's his name? I can't think of his name. Oh, he was like 10:30 or something like that.
He got a 9:46 one time. God. And I'm just like, dude.
I mean, that's elite.
yeah, that's elite.
Yeah.
But it's funny too, because when, I don't know if you know this, but I went into aviation afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And dude, when I was down in the warrant officer course running like high 12s, dude, you know, like absolute savage. And dude, the funny thing about flight school is if you could maintain, I want to say it was a 290.
Yeah.
If you could maintain a 290 or above, you didn't have to come to morning PT.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Yeah, no, they're like, if you can prove that you know how to keep yourself in shape.
That's very warrant officer right there.
And bro, the difference between showing up for morning PT or showing up for class was 3 hours.
Oh, man.
6 a.m. formation for PT and then 9 a.m.
Yeah.
in the classroom. And I remember telling guys, I'm like, bro, I go home at night and run wind sprints up and down my street because I get 3 more hours of sleep every single night than you guys do. And you're not willing to put the work in.
I know, right? Yeah.
Like that's a no fucking brainer.
Yeah, that's quite the incentive right there.
They're like, nope, whatever. That's not a big deal. I'm like, dude,
have fun.
We're just not cut from the same cloth. But dude, I was in the reserves for a little while and we had a company PT test. And bro, again, I'm not an elite runner, right? It was a 1 mile out and back run. And I ran out and I was coming halfway back. And there were reservists still running out. And I'm like, oh, these dudes are setting up for like a 22-minute 2 mile or something. What are we fucking talking about?
Time by a sundial. You know?
Even back then, I was thinking like, dude, our military is outside of the regiment.
Yeah.
Like if you go to like PLDC or like these integrated courses, what's it called now? Do you know? I know it was warrior leadership
I think that's
for a while.
I think that's what it's still called when I got out anyways.
Yeah. To get your E5. And you realize really quickly, it's like, oh, the Army's not what I thought it was.
No. I had to go right before I started the Q course, I had to go to the 18th Airborne Corps one at Fort Bragg. And I would rather pretty much go back to any school than go back to that one. Cause like that's where you went to PLDC? PLDC. Yeah. Waiting for the Q course. And like, they hated me because it was like me and 2 of my buddies that were waiting for the Q course. And like already we're in trouble, but like the 82nd, all they cared about was like drill and ceremony, like how your uniform looked and like just stuff that we didn't really do in Ranger Regiment. And they're like, you've been in the Army for 3 years. Like, how do you not know like how to march a squad or something like that?
Because I've never done it.
And all I can think of is like, how can you run 15 minutes and 2 mile and even talk to me?
Yeah.
You know, just different perspectives.
Dude, I remember when I went through PLDC, we were, however it was morning PT was divided that everybody took a turn in running platoon PT. Like that was part of PLDC. You run platoon PT one day. So when I was chosen to run platoon PT, it's like the night before and you put everything on the board, like what equipment. It's like everyone bring their P mask. And I was like, I'm going to put these fuckers through a P mask run. And so we're down in formation, morning PT and PTs with P masks. And the cadre called me over. They're like, hey man, hey Anderson, come over. We got to talk to you for a second. I was like, yeah, what's up? They're like, you know, you can't do this, right? I said, what do you mean you can't do this? This isn't like official, like Army PT. You can't do this to people.
Like people will die.
Yeah. Tell everyone to ground their PMS. We're going on a run without them. I was like, fuck.
Psychological win though for the day.
Bro, here's another fucking funny PLDC story. So we would take turns leading patrols. It's almost like, you remember, it was like you go out and do like a 4-day field problem or some shit.
Yep.
You dig fighting positions. And I was chose to lead a patrol. And so I was following my azimuth, and like we had to hit something on the other side of a big open field, right? So I get to the edge of the wood line. I see this big open field, and our objective's on the other side of it. So I fucking do a dog leg, and I'm skirting the big open field. And the cadre's like, halt the patrol, halt the patrol. Anderson, come back here. You just veered off your azimuth by about 90 degrees. So yeah, I know. What are you talking about? We're supposed to be going that way. What are you doing? I said, you want to march everybody out into the open field right on the other side of the objective? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Keep doing it. And it's like the cadre are even out of touch with like basic military doctrine.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, probably because the guy was like a mechanic or something like that. And they're like, you're going to go teach PLDC. And he just got like the little instruction things that patrol. Okay, patrol.
Dude, the same thing happened at the warrant officer course. We do day land nav, night land nav in the warrant officer course. Yeah. Right. But the night land nav portion, you're partnered up because you just have a bunch of people lost out there. Sure. Right. And so at the end of everything, they say, hey, we're going to call out a handful of names. You guys are all land nav fails and you have to retest tomorrow. So they're calling everybody out. Anderson, fall out. And I was like, there's no way. Because I smashed that land nav course. Yeah. Like, I don't toot my own horn about much shit, but one thing I was always good at in the regiment was fucking land nav. Yeah. Because, bro, we fucking do that shit a lot. Yeah. You know? And we all fall out, and I was like, there's no way I fucking failed. I smashed this course. And the fucking cadre came over and they said, hey, you got the best time on this course we've ever seen. Would you mind staying late and doing the retrain for this class? I was like, yeah, no problem, sir. You know, but that's a fucking army, man. Yeah. But the other side of it is, again, like everybody wears a different hat. You can't expect everybody to hold the. I mean, if they said, hey, fix this fucking Bradley, I'd be. Yeah, exactly. What? Yeah.
Hey, man, as long as my pilots can fly the helicopter, that's like, I don't really care how fast they run 2 miles.
Yeah. That was a really weird course because it wasn't just aviation warrant officers. It was all warrant officers. Right? And they really promoted it as a leadership course, right? Even though warrants don't typically hold command. I guess they are more and more now from what I've heard.
Aviation and special forces, the only two when I got out of the Army that could command.
Okay. Got it. But it was strange because a lot of what was being taught was geared towards leadership while simultaneously treating us like children. You know? I remember I asked, because it was a lockdown course. You're in those barracks. I think it's 6 or 8 weeks or something, right? Maybe, I don't remember, maybe a month. Regardless, it's a lockdown course. Yeah. And I remember talking to my cadre. I was like, hey, if this is a leadership course, don't you think one of the first expectations you could set on a leader is to be to work on time? And he laughs. He goes, hey, at the end of the day, he goes, at the end of the day, the Army needs to have numbers. And if we didn't have this a lockdown course, half you motherfuckers would fail for not showing up to. I was like, all right.
It is what it is. Yeah.
You know? And we'd have to sing songs and have matching shoelaces, just a bunch of weird shit, dude.
I got lucky because SF about, I think 06 or 07, they stopped sending guys to Rucker. And so we had our own Special Forces warrant course.
That's right. You ended up going warrant too,
I did,
right?
Yeah. Okay, I did my last 9 years. I was a warrant.
Dude, what were you E7 before you switched?
Yeah, I was an E7. Yeah.
Did your paycheck double?
Well, from E7, when you're getting all the SF like pays and whatnot, to W01, you actually lose money.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it doesn't really buff back out until like you W2, and then I retired as a 3, so that definitely helps.
Got it. Because when I went from E5 to 01, it was a massive
that's big. Yeah, for sure.
And you know what else worked in my benefit was I had a break in service, but your IRI time counts as time in service. Yeah. So my first paycheck was a W1 with 8 years in. Oh, and nice. I was like, oh, fuck, dude. I'm rich, bitch. You know? Yeah. And then I was also, you get BAH once you're in flight school. Yeah. So it's like, dude, fucking, I never knew I could make $5,000 a month.
Army's giving me so much money. Yeah. That's actually how I felt for the majority of my career. I was like, they're paying me for this shit? This is amazing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And then also, like, I mean, your fucking responsibilities, if you're single and no insurance, your food's fucking covered, your housing's covered. It's like literally every cent that you make, you can go blow on Slipknot posters at Hot Topic.
Exactly.
Like when me and you remember Toby Folk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we were roommates, when we were we were privates, and that's exactly what we do. Oh fuck yeah, it's payday. Let's go blow a bunch of money on shit for our room in the barracks.
Yeah, a bunch of Natty Light. And,
Dude, like the platoon sergeant could always count on coming into our room to grab a beer. So we formed a little unacknowledged alliance.
Yeah.
Hey, Folk Anderson, can I grab a beer? Yes, you can, Sergeant Bannerman. But like I remember days when it's like, oh, my bank account is literally zero.
But it's okay because I live in the barracks. I got a meal card. Like it's fine.
Fuck, dude. Dude, when did you? Oh, that's right. You said you left right before 9/11 to go to SFAS.
I was in selection for 9/11 and came back and went to the Q course.
Did you leave as an E4?
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to do that?
I'd always wanted to go to SF.
That was just the plan from the get-go.
That was kind of the plan. And then I just thought that, I'd been there for a bit and we weren't really doing anything. Even after 9/11, I thought that 3rd Battalion got the jump in. And I was like, well, that's it. I mean, that's going to be the entire war.
Isn't that nuts, bro?
Yeah.
Like we thought it'd be another Desert Storm.
Another Panama or whatever. I mean, because we were in battalion when they hit the coal. And there was a bunch of hubbub, hey, we're gonna go get these guys, and then nothing happened.
Yeah,
and they launched some cruise missiles, and that was it.
It's dude, you got these fucking. They're like Rangers are like a Malinois on the end of a leash. Just let them go bite something.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
Just go in and let those guys get some real world experience and fucking send a message and then be done with it.
Yeah. I mean, and had we just gone after deliberately gone after Al Qaeda and not messed around with well, now let's build a government. I mean,
dude,
just how different things could have turned out.
Yeah, see, Joe Kent breaks things. He doesn't fix things. We used to say that as dude, send us when you need a fucking compound leveled.
Break glass case war.
Don't send us when you want to rebuild the fucking the government of the Al Anbar province.
Exactly.
And then the other thing that they fucked up too is because I did a bunch of deployments doing exactly that with State Department. We're rebuilding the Anbar province, and it's you're pushing a Western ideology on people that don't understand that, and it will never fucking work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's where the money laundering really comes in. I mean, I think a lot of it's just good intentions, but there's also a lot of people who are just that's where we can send a ton of money. And it's for this thing right now the government prioritizes, stabilizing Iraq. There you go. Turn on the cash pickets.
But one thing that I do always say is if I had to do it over again, I think I'd still go do it.
I mean, yeah.
Because the government made us all motherfuckers, man.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to intimidate or scare.
Exactly.
Or because we've seen as bad as it fucking gets. And so this is an outcome of all your bullshit. And now you have a bunch of fucking monsters out in your society.
Yeah.
So stand the fuck by.
Our government needs people that are willing to go and take those risks and bear that cost. It's on the government to make sure that we use it for the right things that are actually going to benefit us. Because at the end of the day, we can talk about the human cost all day long, but really it eats me up on multiple levels that we spent, I think it's $9 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan, lost 8,000, at least. And then it's okay, so tell me the thing that we got. It's well, we got nothing. That's insane to me.
Bro, do you remember, I don't remember what, maybe you were already gone, but a sensitive piece of equipment got lost on a jump. And the whole battalion was online going through the woods out by, what was it Fryer? What was our DZ that was out past range 7?
Point Salinas.
Yeah. And I don't remember if it was nods or a peg 2, but something got lost.
I vaguely remember, I think.
Okay, so
I think
sensitive item accountability is something when you show up as a private, you tie everything down. It's everything,
stupid stuff.
Everything that you fucking own is tied down.
The coffee cup you have tied up in your private.
It's. And we left Blackhawks behind.
Exactly.
What?
I remember thinking that so many different times in my career. I was in Iraq in 2011 when we were going to leave, and we just left so much crap there. And I thought the exact same thing. I'm when I was a private, if I lost a freaking battery,
exactly.
I remember we would shut down, and then a whole post. If you lose a freaking a laser, the whole base will shut down. But then they're just we're going to leave all these MRAMs and all this stuff here. And then in Afghanistan, just this entire, infrastructure. It's just insane.
We had fucking, there's videos of them flying around with fucking, like I heard it was propaganda that they weren't hanging people, but that's what it fucking looked like.
That's sure what it looked like.
That's sure what it looked like to me.
That wasn't no one man spies X-Fill. That was
yeah, exactly.
Plus, I mean, like knowing the Taliban, they're like, helicopter, what can we do with it? Like hang some people.
But in the Taliban's defense, if I was just given a Black Hawk and no rules, I might fly around and hang some people too. Oh fuck, man! Are you friends with Chad Robichaud?
I'm not. I know who he is from the whole Save Our Allies thing.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing about like his perspectives, and I guess he's like, I don't know if it's released yet or not, but they did a documentary on all that.
Yeah,
Saving Aziz.
Yeah, I saw the ad for it. Yeah,
his interpreter and shit.
Yeah,
and it's just nuts, man. How it's like a lot of dudes from our community still went back over there and were like trying to do their part.
It's pretty wild. I mean, because like the government decided that they were going to leave the equipment. They decided they were going to leave Americans, but yet they grabbed whoever could get to the gate, threw them on airplanes, and then flew them right to the heartland. Like, it's just, I mean, again, like you're gonna try and tell me that's incompetence? Yeah. Like 140,000 unvetted refugees we just threw on planes. Like that's not incompetence. Like that was by design,
bro. That was the most Afghan thing I'd ever seen. Them clinging to the landing gear because it's like, yeah, okay. If you're able to cling to that wheel, there's a 100% chance you're going to die.
You're gonna, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I mean, this
is not going to end well for you.
Yeah,
but they're still like, fuck it, let's go.
Speaks to their, I mean, desperation. They're just like,
that's what I'm saying.
Like,
dude.
There's a 1 in a million chance. Like, I'm taking it.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like, is their culture. And I know this is hard to understand because like we put a massive emphasis on like the value of human life.
Yeah.
Right. When I was in Ramadi, one of the military units that was based on Blue Diamond, where we were at, they shot up a car at a checkpoint or something and shot this dude's car up and killed his sons. And so what do they always do when those type of things happen? They're knocking on the gate demanding money.
Demanding money, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And that's just their culture. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but he was demanding more money for his car than his sons. He's like, this car was worth $2,500 and I also want $500 for each of my sons or something. And it's like, what?
Just,
like, and that just goes back to what I was saying. Like they look at human life and just have a different value system attached to it. You know, It's like all Americans think we're fucking immortal and we're going to live forever. But those people that have lived in third world shitholes that have been around warfare and violence, like it's literally just how life is.
Yeah, it's something that we can't even really fathom unless you actually go there and experience it. Yet there's people in like the State Department that are like, you know what those guys need? Those guys need an election. Like they are going to be truly liberated when we give them the ability to vote. Okay.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we saw is like in Ramadi, where it's like, hey, we've overthrown the Saddam regime, and you guys have your freedom. Like, oh, I'm going to go kill all my neighbors because I've always hated those guys.
Exactly.
I was like, no. That's not what we meant by freedom. We meant nice freedom.
Yeah.
Like, bro, when people don't have any oversight, there's a certain percentage of the population that is going to go savage and fucking fully exploit that. And that's what we saw everywhere, dude.
Yep.
Like, what was it? Was it in Raqqa, Syria, where they were like lining all the streets with people's heads?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's like, dude,
purely barbaric. Yeah.
Fucking, that's what happens when people go fucking savage.
Exactly.
But dude, and I also don't think we're immune to that either.
I don't think we are either.
You fucking take, like, if we see these things unfold in our lifetime where like the grid goes down or the supply chain comes to a screeching fucking halt, you take people and make them starve for 3 days.
Yeah.
You're going to see a different side of humanity.
I mean, even just a basic lack of law and order. When in 2020, it was riot season.
Yeah.
And it was known that the police officers in most major urban centers, especially Portland, Seattle, and a couple of places in the country, weren't going to enforce any law. I mean, that got sketchy fast. And to me, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up because I was like, this isn't what you people think it is. For those lucky Americans who'd never been around violence before, I was like, this isn't just some protest getting rowdy. This isn't something, and this isn't going to just go away. Like this stuff goes on until it's checked. That's the way this works, man. Like, and people just, unfortunately, I think as Americans fortunately and unfortunately, they hadn't experienced that before. They couldn't interpret it in the way that we did.
And what did people do? They set up an autonomous zone. They had walls and rules. and they were enforcing those with guns.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But bro, like even on a much lower level, like it was put out, and I was on the other end of this because I was a police officer. They said, hey, traffic stops are no longer authorized unless they are egregious, meaning like a kidnapping or a fucking bank robbery in progress. Like we are not stopping people for 10 over. We are not fucking stopping people for burned out taillights. That's halt all traffic stops. It took the citizens about 15 minutes before it was like the Autobahn on I-5.
Dude, all of 21 when the Washington State Patrol like couldn't pursue people, like it was the freaking Autobahn.
Dude, I mean, I loved it, dude.
Yeah, it was nice.
I drive to work going 100 miles an hour. No one gave a fuck, dude.
Yeah. I got pulled over the other day, and like, I just told the cop, I was like, yeah, I screwed up. And I was like, to be honest with you, like, you guys weren't pulling over people for like a year and a half. He's like, yeah, I know. He let me off. He was cool.
You let us, it was a stater that let you off?
It was a battleground cop, but I was going a little bit. I hadn't seen anybody get pulled over for just like speeding in 2 years.
Dude, I got pulled over while I was a police officer. This was before the COVID stuff. I was in the carpool lane alone, speeding, and I had expired tags. And I didn't have I was insured, but I didn't have my updated proof of insurance.
Yeah.
So it's just an absolute shit show, right? And I was like, I'm not even gonna tell this guy I'm a cop because it's so fucking embarrassing. And so I didn't, and I just took the ticket and was like, all right, dude.
Hopefully I never see that guy in uniform.
Yeah. It's so funny, man. Let's do this, dude. Let's take a quick piss break.
Sure.
Because I'm struggling with this. I drank a bunch of coffee on the way here.
Yeah.
And then I want to hear about your future plans, staying in the fight and where we go from here.
Sure.
It was a much needed break. My 40-year-old prostate was starting to struggle.
Same.
So yeah, dude. Like the election that you just fought 2 years for didn't go your way.
Yeah.
And I saw you post something the other day about what's next. And I think, fuck, dude, if I can use this podcast to just keep the spotlight on you as much as I can, I think that's an important thing to do, to keep letting people know that there's still good people in the fight. And so what's next, man?
So we're basically doing it all over again. And we're going to go after the same seat. We're going to unseat Marie Perez in 2024. So I announced, so we started the campaign, doing the fundraising, getting out and working with all the different organizations and individuals that are going to go out and knock on doors for us and really just try and flip this district.
So it's just a repeat of the last 24 months.
It basically is. I mean, there's going to be some obviously like tactical differences. I'm not having to fight a hard Republican civil war like we were last time. I was going after a member of my own party. I had to unseat her, get rid of Herrera Butler, and then try and beat the Democrat. This time we're trying to consolidate the Republican Party as much as we can to unseat Perez.
Since you were the candidate last time, are you automatically the go-to guy, or is that a process itself?
I have to win the primary in August of 2024, just like I did in 2022. So it's a free country. People are welcome to jump in and challenge me, and we'll go through that process. But one of the big things that we're doing is working on, ballot harvesting in the state of Washington. For folks that are outside of Washington, it's legal. A lot of states it's not legal in, but going out and collecting ballots from people when the voting window opens, that's legal. Republicans have really shied away from doing that because we don't like that process. But the Democrats are not the majority of this district, but they did a phenomenal job of getting the majority of their people to vote. And we need to do the same thing.
So when you say ballot harvesting, like what exactly does that process entail? Like they take ballots out and then pick them back up?
Yeah. So you can basically, in Washington State, in a lot of states, it's like only you can go turn in your ballot. Yeah. And there's a check there. Like you actually have to go vote in person is one check. The other check is that, hey, if you get caught at a box dropping off multiple ballots, you're going to be in trouble unless someone can prove that they're permanently confined and you're that one authorized person. In Washington, there's no laws around that. And so it's perfectly legal for you to go door to door, for you to go to apartment complexes, nursing homes, and say, hey, do you have your ballot? It's been sent out. Would you like to vote? and would you like for me to take your ballot from you? Like, you can't help them fill it out. That's all illegal, but you can take the ballot and you can go turn it in for them. So there's a lot of folks here in the state, because they mail out the ballots here 2.5, 3 weeks early. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that just get them and they forget to turn them in. And so actually the game is identifying who's more than likely going to be a Republican or Democrat voter, and then going to those getting people. One of your people there. So for big urban centers, the Democrats love this, because they'll go to apartment complexes, because people are, tightly confined. They can do a really good job of ballot harvesting. I think in a district like this, which is primarily rural, if we go to churches, we go to places where, people are doing things like physical fitness or shooting, like they're more than likely going to be our voters. Yeah. Right when that window opens, we need to tell them that, hey, voting has started. Like, if you need a ballot, we can help you get one. We can register to vote right here. And if you fill out your ballot, we can go and drop it off for you.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So when you get elected next time, because you're going to be a fucking subject matter expert by this time, you move full time, right? Is that it's a full time position there, or are you bouncing back and forth?
You're bouncing back and forth. Yes.
What's the op tempo look like then between DC and here?
They basically have it so that for most months they're in session, they still get at least 10 days of district time. But then they have this huge break in the summer. They have another huge one around the holidays where they're supposed to be in the district. The one in the summer, though, is designed especially for Congress, because they have to run every 2 years. That's campaign season.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Do most of them just go dick off during those breaks, or are they actually like meeting with their constituents?
There's a lot of them that you never hear. I mean, the woman that I unseated, she wasn't very present. And that's one of the reasons why I think I was able to take her down. There's some
she voted for the Trump impeachment too, right?
Yeah, voted for the Trump impeachment. She had a laundry list of really bad votes. But yeah, so there's some people that aren't very active in the districts. There's others that are very active in their districts. I want to really spend as much time in the district as possible, kind of just being the people's touch point back of Washington, D.C.
Which is exactly like how it's supposed to work.
What you're supposed to do. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, because there's so much money involved in it, what most of them, especially Congress, because they're running every 2 years, any moment that they get that they're not in session in D.C., they're probably fundraising surely just for their own survival.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's just, I mean, like when you leave here today, I'll be on the phone for 4 hours calling people saying, hey, you donated last time, or like, hey, you're a Republican donor, like this is me. Making your pitch. It's horrible.
I hate to do that.
It's horrible.
Because asking for money,
it's horrible.
Even asking for money, like from your own family or a close friend or something, just something feels off about it. But to just be cold calling people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, what is the percentage of people that are like, yeah, I'd be interested versus just hanging up?
Well, this is where kind of like everything else, like intel is everything. So like if you can get someone who can give you a list of people who do donate to guys like me, then like that's gold, because I can call them and like my time is actually, these people are looking for candidates to invest in. But in general, if you're just going out and you're casting your broad net, then it's brutal. Like it's like doing sales, and I still don't like doing it. It's my least favorite part of being a candidate is the fundraising. Like I'll do town halls and debates all day long. Those are actually fairly enjoyable, but like talking about policy, that's great. I think that's probably the best part of the job. The worst part is going out and saying like, I need you to give me thousands of dollars.
Well, I would say debating policy is the best part of the job if you are grounded in reality and you have points that you believe in and actually stand behind. Yeah, exactly. But the ones that don't, they're more afraid of that than anything.
They are, yeah. And so they'll spend their time fundraising, and then they can pay for the ads. And
you said something during the debate. You're like, Maria Perez will only debate me in Vancouver or Portland.
Yeah.
Like where was her actual district?
So we're at the same district.
Well, not the district, her town.
So she's from Skamania. Yeah. So she's from.
You won't talk to anyone out in Skamania.
Yeah. I won her district. I won her precinct.
Oh, really?
She won in Vancouver. Like that's where she won the race, was in urban Vancouver. And that's where we need to put in some more effort to really expose just kind of how radical she is. Because Vancouver, there's some purple pockets of it, but I think it's still fairly conservative. But yeah, the only places that she would show up was in Vancouver, and still she was reading off her cards. She claimed to be this big rural. If you look at her ads, she's like cutting down trees and like she's this rural person. But it's
I run a machine shop.
Yeah, her husband runs a machine. Yeah, but that's the thing is like, hey, if you can can fundraise, you can paint the picture that you want.
Well, dude, I'm buddies with the guy that owns the huge jiu-jitsu academy in Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
So like,
okay,
however I can connect you guys and just,
that'd be awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like you literally saw that every vote counts.
Every vote counts, man. Yeah.
You know, and to go back to one thing that you said, like at the beginning when we started recording, you're like, don't get disgruntled or like give up on the system because that all ensures that they do actually get their way.
They do.
You know, one thing that when I was talking, I don't remember. It's weird having friends that have podcasts because I can't remember if we had a conversation about it or if I was listening to the show. But Andy Frisella always says, he's like, let's say that election fraud is absolutely real and we're losing elections due to fraud.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot easier for them to continue to perpetuate that fraud if we just stay at home and don't vote.
That's exactly right.
It's easy to cover up stuff that's not there. It's going to be a lot harder to cover up fucking thousands of people casting ballots on the opposite end because like it comes down to math at some point.
Exactly.
If you can fucking show that the math isn't adding up, now we got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And if like you have a real, actual, legitimate win, like you surge and you win by several thousand, that's hard for them. Someone's going to have to take a lot of risk to push that back down. But if the margin is narrow and, we just have a lot of people that consistently stop showing up and more of their people show up, well then, hey man, then no one's going to really take any risk because they won.
And bro, I got disgruntled with the election process for a while and just sat out for several years.
Yeah.
It's all the crazy shit that brought me back.
Yeah.
Because
really.
it's like every vote does count now.
Yeah. I was not very good about voting. Yeah, I went like after Bush, and then I was like, "Well, the Republicans suck," and then Obama sucked, and I was like,
Romney versus Obama, and I was like, "I don't give a fuck, dude."
Yeah, I penciled in Ron Paul, even though he had already dropped out, because I was just like, "I'm not voting for McCain or Romney," But then so Trump was the guy that brought me back into the fold because I was like, "Okay, all right, if we're gonna do this amount of disruption, like I'm on board for that."
Bro, do you remember that viral clip of that lady that she's like, Romney, he sucks bad. Obama's going to give us a phone. And, and then they made that fucking Obama phone like viral song.
Yeah.
But bro, that's the silly shit that they tell people. Like, you're going to cast a vote for that could change the trajectory of the future of this country because some motherfucker said he's going to give you a phone.
Yeah. Or you heard one ad once where you heard that the one guy like was, he's a Nazi or he is. I had a bunch of different attacks thrown at me. Like, so it all comes down to targeting. So if you were,
tell me some of the attacks.
Oh, they're great. So if you were a known Republican voter, you would get fed that I was a secret Bernie Sanders supporter, and so they'd show you pictures. When I got out of the military, I didn't get a haircut for a couple of years, and so I had like really long hair. So yeah, exactly.
Conservatives can't have long hair.
Conservatives can't have long hair. So they found a picture of me with like long hair, and they're like, this guy, because there's some crossover between like the populist left and the populist right, where especially when you talk about like limiting foreign intervention, bringing back manufacturing, they're like his talking points are just like Bernie Sanders. Like, and so if you're a Republican, you got fed I was a secret Bernie bro, and then if you were on the left, it was like he's a white nationalist, he's a domestic terrorist, he thinks that January 6th was a good thing. So there's one ad somewhere you can pull it up where it's like I'm being compared to Bernie Sanders and Adolf Hitler in the same ad. It's just like whatever you need. This guy's either Bernie or he's Adolf Hitler. One of the two.
It's obviously if this is their strategy, then it's working for some people.
For some it is.
You know what I mean? But it's fuck, man. It makes you think like, should there be some type of like IQ requirement to vote or something? Because like, obviously we can't do that.
We can't do that. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you just see some stupid talking point that's like Joe Kent is basically Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
I don't like that guy. He's a bad person.
Because it takes time to go research a candidate, go to one of their town halls, or like to sit through one of those debates. Like you actually had to invest some time.
Yeah.
But if you got a mailer or you heard a 30-second thing on the radio, you're like that guy, don't like the guy. Okay, well, that's how I'm going to vote. Like unfortunately, that's where the fundraising does become like this necessary evil because I don't like the game, but that's the game.
I noticed there was a pretty stark contrast between she would use every opportunity to try and tear you down.
Yeah.
And you would bring up like political talking points at times to shine a spotlight on things that you were out of agreement with her, but you never like really went after anything personal.
Yeah.
Is that a kind of a strategy that you've landed on, just being the bigger person?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think it just gets tiresome. You know? Like there's a time I think to punch your candidate, to punch your opponent on if there's something glaring. But overall, like, look, me and Marie Perez disagree on a bunch of stuff, but like she's probably not a horrible person. You know, she's got like,
I don't know, she has those crazy eyes.
There's policy stuff I disagree with her on, and let's talk about the policy stuff because that's literally the most important thing we're going to do when we go to DC is vote. And so let's hear how we're going to vote. So yeah, for me, and then also, I mean, there is a whole nother dynamic there of like, I've so far I've only ran against women, and like there's no scenario where me hitting a woman, you know, verbally,
exactly.
It's not, number one, it doesn't come naturally to me. Like if it was another dude over there, you know,
fuck that guy.
Like, okay, now we're gonna go. But it's like I feel bad. The couple times I had to go like on the attack against her or some of my other female opponents, like it doesn't feel natural. You know?
Yeah, you got to be careful saying that though, because we're all the same.
Because we're all the same, right? Yeah,
there's no fucking difference.
Which is it? Yeah.
I say it at my jiu-jitsu academy all the time. I'm like, hey, I know this is not a politically correct statement, but on my mats, we treat our women differently and we protect them. So if I see you if I see you fucking beating up on the girls, remember they're here developing a skill set for self-defense, and their journey, just by their fucking size and their physical attributes, is typically a slower one.
Yeah, it's more challenging
because they have a physical disadvantage. Yeah. So if I see you beating up on my girls, you're fucked, dude. You know,
you're getting some.
But that's the whole culture now. Like we fucking defend our women there. Yeah. And I say the same thing to the kids. I'm like, hey, I know at school they tell you you're all the same, but we're not. You know,
exactly.
And you see, they like they even the little fucking kids, they see bits of truth and you can see it resonate with them, you know? Yeah. Like little boys should be protecting little girls.
Yep.
That's a culture thing.
I have that conversation all the time with my sons. I'm like, you know, hey, you're there to protect women. Like even if she's being mean to you on the playground or whatever, like the way you can react to her is different than the way you can react to, you know, a guy.
Exactly.
And the thing is, little kids get that. Like there's certain things I think that are complex to explain to little kids, but something like that, I think it's just hardwired into our DNA. They're like, oh yeah, that is right. Okay, that does make sense.
It's funny watching, you know, because I have a group of girls there now. My daughter's one of them that's been training for years.
That's awesome.
So then you get the little boys that are new, but then they get the crap kicked out of them by the girls.
Oh yeah.
And then the world's out of alignment because it's like, wait, I'm a little boy. I'm supposed to be tougher.
Yeah. There's a couple of my sons go to wrestling and jiu-jitsu every night, wrestling then jiu-jitsu. And there's a couple little girls in there that they're my oldest son's 7. They're about the same age as him. But they've been coming for a long time. And the thing about little girls is they listen. You probably noticed this as a coach. They listen better than guys do. Like my son's got my attention span. So he's like, you know, looking at that, he's like hitting his brother. But these little girls, they pay attention. And so my son kept getting his butt kicked by him. And he's like, Dad, why are they beating me? I'm like, because they listen in class. Yeah. It's really that simple.
It's really interesting to observe like the cycles in the gym, right? Yeah. Like the girls, I call them the teenage mafia because it's a bunch of 13-year-old girls that kind of rule the roost, right? Yeah. And they got really good and they were just beating the crap out of all the boys. Then there's this group of boys. But here's the thing, because the girls were so good technically.
Yeah.
And they were having so much success, they weren't hungry to train as hard as they could to maintain that. And we got this little group of boys that are like chomping at their heels. Yeah. And now I feel like the tides are starting to change and the girls aren't at the top of the food chain anymore. And they're fucking frustrated by it, right? And it's funny watching them like lose some fights to these boys that have been chasing them for a year now. Yeah, and you can see the frustration and the anger, and it's like, no, these kids, these young boys have earned this. Yeah, they got their butts kicked by you for a year. And you guys have been sailing because you're technically better. Yeah, and now they're closing that gap. You know? But that's one of the aspects that's just fascinating about jiu-jitsu in general is finding out like where you sit in the whole pecking order.
Oh yeah. And
then always trying to adjust your positioning. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And it's not a place of like ego or like, oh, I want to be, you do want to be better than the other people. Like that's why we're all there. We want to be the best that we can be. Yeah. But it's interesting when you see a guy like one of my blue belts went on like a 3-week hunting trip and he came back and he's like, dude, the other guys that I was just even with, they're beating me up now. And I was like, bro, 3 weeks is a long time.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And like they got fucking 15 to 20 more practices under their belt now.
Yeah.
And people see like in a short amount of time, you can pull ahead or fall behind.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where it really starts to become fascinating, dude.
I was just, when I decided to run for office last time, I was just sort of starting to get back into jiu-jitsu. This great gym. It's funny how many jiu-jitsu gyms fought the lockdowns, because we have a great one in Battleground that did the same thing. And they've grown expensive ever since. Just a fantastic community.
Good for them, dude.
I just started.
What's the name? I'll give them a shout out.
Oh, Battleground Martial Arts.
Okay.
Yeah, Battleground Martial Arts they have an amazing gym. They got CrossFit classes. They got kids. Their kids program, they're outstanding. There's probably like 70 kids in there every night doing jiu-jitsu. Great community. Yeah. So Jeremiah pretty much did, I think the same thing you did. They said, lock down your gym. And he said, no. He grabbed an American flag and like ran up and down the street to say that the gym was open until they were like, hey, can you just not do that and we'll leave you alone? But his gym grew. And so he's created this great community. But right when I just started to run for office, I was getting back into jiu-jitsu and then had a huge break. And now every time I go back, the same guys that started around the same time as me, they just wipe the mat with me. Yeah.
But brother, I always talk about, like, I always joke and say I can't do an episode and not talk about jiu-jitsu. But dude, the pecking order that gets established on the mats, again, it's not a place of like, I'm better than you. It's just everybody knows where each other is at.
Yeah.
And bro, there's an element of comfort that comes from that, because we all know each other intimately. And it's like, if I roll with that guy, I'll fucking smash him, and he knows I'll smash him. If I roll with that guy, it's going to be pretty even back and forth.
Right.
That's the dude that gives me the biggest problems in the gym. And then we all know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's what allows everyone to just set their ego down, because it's like, when we're actually competing against each other, yes, we're trying to win. So there's always an element of ego. People say like, check your ego at the door. It's like, I'm trying to break this dude's arm. It's an ego driven. Yeah. You know, but, as soon as the bell goes off, everybody's at ease with each other, because we all know where each other stands.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in society, just in general, not only do they not know where they stand, but they don't know where anybody else stands either.
Exactly.
And like, having that understanding with the group of peers that you surround yourself with, bro, it comes with like a high level of comfort.
It does.
And I think that's why that's one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu is blowing up.
Yeah.
Is because you can go there. Like you said, there's 70 kids there.
Yeah.
So that means there's 70 parents there. And, dude, half the parents sign up. What I've seen is like, because they see this for what it is.
Yeah.
And now you got this community of people that like, all have an intimate understanding of each other.
Exactly.
And that's important, man.
I think it's something primal too. I mean, just like when humans form societies, like everybody knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, and there was like a lot more cohesion there, which modern society is really taken away from us.
And bro, like you see the equality on the mats. People talk about this all the time that are inside of the jiu-jitsu community, because I've been doing it for 20 years now. Never once have I heard, I don't want to roll with that guy because he's black. Like that kind of shit doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist.
Maybe a black belt, but yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, all of these stereotypes that they are projecting on society. Everybody hates everybody. It's like, dude, not at my gym. Like one of my black belts is a fucking liberal, and he is one of my favorite people in the world. And it's like, you guys think because we hold different political ideologies that we're all supposed to hate each other. And it's like, I've seen our culture going further and further down that path where we're like becoming divided.
Yeah.
Bro, you go on the mats, guess what? Everybody's fucking comfortable being themselves.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's fascinating. And that's why I think like you have to put yourself out there and do something that includes both community and physicality.
Yeah.
To come to those conclusions. You know?
I agree.
Like I have one person that's a transgender. And nobody in the team even knows, because they identify as this, and that's what they go by. And nobody even knows.
No one cares.
Instead of saying like, oh, well, she's actually a girl that thinks she's a boy. Like there isn't any of that. Hey, let's train. That's what's going on.
Yeah. If you're there to train, nobody really
cares.
You're
there to train, you know? And it's cool to see that in real time, where it's like, dude, all of these things that are always force fed down our throat about how much we hate each other, when you get together and train, no one really cares about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd say the majority of the military was that way too. It's like, I think a lot of us probably lean conservative, especially like in, Ranger Regiment, Special Forces and stuff. But like, it's not like we were sitting there discussing policy or anything, like, and we all knew there was like one or two guys that were liberal or whatever, but nobody cared. We were all in the same struggle together because you couldn't care about that trivial nonsense. You just couldn't. You had to know, could you rely on that guy or that girl on your left and right? And that was it.
Man, I talk about all the time. It's like, 2nd Ranger Battalion was a bunch of dudes that basically looked like you and me. You know what I mean?
For the most part,
a bunch of 6 foot, 180 pound white guys.
Yeah, with the same haircut at the time.
With the same haircut. Exactly. But even though that was the majority of the demographic of that unit, there were also plenty of minorities.
Yeah.
And outside of ball busting, just having fun with each other and poking fun, I never once experienced like an element of racism.
No.
Like, oh, dude, that new private. Yeah, that new private that just came from RIP is Mexican, so let's send him to first squad. Like, what the fuck are we talking about?
No.
But they want you to believe that there's an element of racism in everything.
In everything.
And I also never once saw it in law enforcement. Not one time.
Yeah.
Now, I was a law enforcement officer. I always say this in Seattle and Los Angeles. So maybe those are progressive cities, but I never once saw people like conduct themselves in a way where they changed how they behaved based on someone's race.
Yeah.
Not one time.
Probably because of law enforcement, you saw everybody be equally horrible.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it's like if someone's doing something that requires law enforcement attention, all right, then we're going to intervene and we're going to check this person out. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Dude.
That's why I think so much of this is just so artificial, because it's like there's I think most people, whether they're in the military or law enforcement or whether they're bankers or something, this would probably be most people's experience before, I don't know, whatever, 5-10 years ago when this became the thing. But then you hear the media and you're like, wait a sec, maybe I am wrong. You just hear it over and over again. It's like, maybe I'm in this one place where there was no racism, but everything else is racist.
Yeah.
And if I don't agree, then I'm racist. And like, they play that game and they do a great job of gaslighting people. They've gaslit our entire society that everything is systemically racist. It's crazy. Whereas I think when we were growing up, just even 20 plus years ago, it wasn't that way.
And the saddest thing about it is it's like, it's a bunch of white people projecting racism on other white people. And it's like, you're actually like some of the things that they do to project racism on people. Like, for instance, when they say, well, it's harder for black people to get IDs.
And what is that?
That's racism.
That's pretty racist. Like, yeah.
What do you mean it's harder for black people? They're a person just like any other person.
So they can't drive cars or get in an airplane? That's weird.
Exactly. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Anyone holds the same capability of getting a driver's license. Right. And it's like, you start to dissect that. You're like, okay, I see this for what it is, but they're actually the ones. I saw something too. I don't remember. It was in regards to election, but they're like, black people have less access to the internet. Like, what? Like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who would actually, you'd have to be in a bubble where you only interacted with like elite white people to even think that.
Yeah, I know.
Like, there's no black people. Come on.
Just to verbalize something like that. I was like, you motherfuckers are out of touch with reality.
Yeah. And they put you in a trap though, where if you push back against that, they're like, well, see, here's those racists. They have all this internet privilege or whatever the case is. They're like, well, they're questioning them, and really, there's just racism everywhere.
Oh, fuck, man. Well, cool, man. We just hit 2 hours.
Right on.
That's where I like to keep the show now.
Cool.
But I always give my guests the last word and also where to contact you if people have questions or just want to connect with you and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, last word is, hey, things didn't go exactly the way we wanted to in 2022, but let's stay engaged. If you're in Washington State, if you're in the 3rd Congressional District, we, common sense people, we're the majority of the district. Let's get out there. Let's get active. Don't let them win by becoming disenfranchised. So go to joekentforcongress.com. That's my website, touch point for pretty much everything, social media, donations, all that. So we'll get more and more active as we get closer to 2024 with rallies and stuff like that. Awesome, man. Yeah. Well, keep in touch with me. Anything that I can do to help. Let's try and get your name out there. We'll get you on Glover's podcast, get you on Andy Stump's podcast. That'd be awesome. And just help spread the fucking word, man. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. Cool.